Earth isn't a perfect ball, we know that. But the real mystery is miles beneath our feet. Way down below the crust, the planet has been cooling down for billions of years, just not evenly. The Pacific side loses heat faster, while the African side slows that loss by trapping it longer. That difference is why Earth stays restless, with earthquakes tearing the ground apart and volcanic fire breaking through the surface. Think of Earth like a massive engine that's been shut off. The outside cools first, but deep inside, heat lingers. That internal heat is leftover energy from when the planet formed, and it's been slowly trying to escape ever since. For a long time, scientists assumed Earth lost heat evenly in all directions. Hot in the middle, slowly cooling everywhere else. But when a team at the University of Oslo ran simulations that rewound the planet 400 million years and tracked where the heat actually escaped, they saw something very different. The cooling wasn't symmetrical at all. One side of the planet is doing it faster than the other. The difference is striking. The Pacific Hemisphere, the side dominated by the world's largest and deepest ocean, has cooled by about 50 degrees Kelvin, which is roughly 90 degrees Fahrenheit difference, compared to the Africa-Eurasia side. The reason is basically insulation. Africa and Eurasia are on a layered ancient continental crust. The Pacific side is the opposite. It's mostly ocean, resting on a much thinner crust where warmth escapes easily. Plus, the cold seawater on top pulls that heat out non-stop. Because the Pacific side is cooling so fast, the rock deep underground is getting heavy and sinking back toward the core. It's like a giant slow-motion conveyor belt that drags the Earth's crust down with it. Heavy materials sink. As it sinks, it pulls on the edges of tectonic plates, creating stress, trenches, earthquakes, and chains of volcanoes. Most of Earth's earthquakes and volcanoes happen in a giant loop called the Ring of Fire. This is where the ocean floor gets cold, heavy, and sinks deep into the planet. All that sinking rock travels thousands of miles down until it slams into a massive continent-sized structure sitting right near Earth's core. Scientists call this a blob because the heavy ocean floor is constantly falling on top of it. The Pacific blob is squashed flat and pinned down, sitting heavy and locked in place. But the other half of the world is doing the exact opposite. Under Africa, there aren't many sinking plates to act as a weight. Without that pressure holding it down, the African blob is free to grow tall and light. It pushes upward, lifting the ground from below and reshaping the entire continent. In fact, that rising bubble is already starting to tear the surface apart. In East Africa, a massive crack known as the Great Rift Valley is slowly opening up as the ground is pushed from below. Eventually, the pressure will become so high that Africa will literally split in two, allowing a brand new ocean to rush into the gap. There's a cool theory that suggests these blobs might actually be the remains of an ancient planet named Theia. Some researchers believe that Theia crashed into Earth billions of years ago, and while part of it broke off to form the moon, some heavy chunks might have sunk deep inside our planet. So, the reason our interior is so lopsided might be because we literally have pieces of a different world buried inside our own. But that's just a wild theory. Whatever their origin, the blobs matter because they help split the planet into two different behaviors. On the Pacific side, cold slabs keep sinking down and piling up. On the opposite side, heat builds up deep and pushes upward over time. One half is dominated by downward motion, the other by upward motion. And this imbalance doesn't stop at the mantle. It shows up at the very center of the planet because Earth's inner core is still growing. Liquid iron around it gradually turns solid and attaches to the core. This process doesn't progress at the same rate everywhere. One side of the inner core builds up faster than the other. This might sound like it should throw the planet off balance, but it doesn't. Earth's interior isn't rigid like a solid metal ball. Over time, stuff inside can gradually move around. Gravity pulls everything toward the center, helping everything get a bit smoother and keeping the core pretty round. But pretty round doesn't mean perfect. If you want a real example of how uneven Earth is on the inside, look at the Indian Ocean. Where there's more mass underground, gravity pulls a little harder. Where there's less mass, it pulls less. In the middle of the Indian Ocean, there's a huge anomaly called the Indian Ocean gravity hole. In that spot, Earth's pull is weaker than normal, so weak that it can't hold the ocean's surface up at the usual level. The water actually dips downward. You wouldn't notice it sailing through, but you'd technically be sitting about 300 feet lower than the rest of the world's oceans. It's an invisible valley in the sea caused entirely by missing mass deep inside the planet. However, Earth isn't the only world hiding a messy interior behind a smooth surface. Even the Moon is like this. Over billions of years, Earth's gravity slowed the Moon's rotation until it locked into place, keeping one face permanently pointed toward Earth. That's what we know as the near side and the far side. This mattered early in the Moon's history. The near side always faced Earth, while the far side always faced deep space. That long-term setup affected how heat was stored and released inside the Moon. When NASA mapped the Moon's gravity using two spacecraft called GRAIL, they measured something called the love number. It's a value that tells scientists how much a planet or moon flexes under gravity. The Moon's love number turned out higher than expected, which meant its interior was softer than it should be. When scientists looked closer at the gravity data, they found that most of this flexibility came from the side facing Earth. The Moon's near side is softer and warmer deep down, while the far side is cooler and more rigid. Measurements suggest the near side mantle is significantly hotter and more volcanic. That difference shows on the outside. Because the near side was so hot and soft, ancient lava could easily punch through the crust and flood the surface. That created those big dark patches we see at night. On the other hand, the far side stayed colder and stiffer, so the lava never flowed the same way. Back on Earth, the Pacific has another quirk worth mentioning. Our planet isn't just spinning in place. It orbits the sun at over 66,000 miles per hour, and the entire solar system is moving through the galaxy like a car driving through a swarm of bugs. Over long periods of time, objects drifting in from deep space are more likely to hit the side of Earth that's moving forward. And because the Pacific Ocean covers such a huge stretch of that side of the planet, it naturally ends up catching more impacts than smaller oceans or continents. This creates a strange coincidence. The same hemisphere that is leaking the most heat from within is also the world's biggest graveyard for things arriving from the outside. Because it is so vast and lonely, space agencies even use its most remote coordinates as a spacecraft cemetery at a spot called Point Nemo. We deliberately aim satellites and massive space stations like Mir to crash right there. So the Pacific ends up taking the hits from two directions, by accident from the universe and on purpose from us. Earth is restless, continents drift, oceans open and close. In a few 100 million years, the map will look completely different. The Pacific is actually shrinking right now. Eventually, the Americas might crash into Asia, and a new ocean will have to take over the job of being the planet's main radiator and its front bumper. But for now, we should probably be thankful for that massive, chilly, unlucky ocean. Put on your woolen hats, find the warmest mittens, and go buy the thickest blankets. The next ice age might be just around the corner. And the trigger is much more shocking than anyone might have expected. What's even worse? We have no control over our bitterly cold future. Earth's climate has been on a wild ride for millions of years. It's been warming up, freezing over into ice ages, then heating up again to the more normal temperatures we know today. These cycles, called quaternary ice ages, are part of a much longer pattern of global freezing and thawing. For a long time, scientists thought Earth's orbit around the sun had something to do with triggering ice ages, but figuring out exactly how was tricky. Well, new research has finally connected the dots. It shows how tiny changes in Earth's tilt, wobble, and orbit mess with the growth and melting of huge ice sheets. This is a pretty big deal because it helps scientists understand not just what happened in the past, but also what might happen to our climate in the future. Even small shifts in how Earth moves through space can have huge effects over thousands of years. These changes control how much sunlight different parts of the planet get, which affects how ice sheets grow and shrink. Earth doesn't orbit the Sun in a perfect circle. It actually follows a slightly oval-shaped path. This phenomenon is called orbital eccentricity. Since the Sun isn't sitting right in the center of this oval, Earth's distance from it changes throughout the year. Plus, the oval itself slowly shifts position in space over time, which is called orbital precession. On top of that, Earth's tilt, aka obliquity, also changes slightly as our planet moves around the Sun. Scientists have known for a while that these orbital quirks impact our planet's climate, causing cycles of warming and cooling. As different parts of Earth's orbit shift, they change how sunlight is distributed across the planet, influencing seasons and ice ages. These Milankovitch cycles happen roughly every 20,000, 40,000, 100,000, and even 400,000 years. The difficult part is to figure out how each of these orbital changes affects climate shifts. Earth's climate is a complicated system, with tons of factors influencing it at the same time. Modeling all these processes is no easy task. It needs huge computing power and a deep understanding of each factor's role in shaping our planet's past and future climate. There are two cycles that are super close to each other in timing. Precession, which happens every 21,000 years, and the second harmonic of obliquity, that happens at 20,500 years. But even though they're so close, no one has been able to directly connect either of these cycles to the end of an ice age. On top of that, for the past 800,000 years, ice ages have ended every 100,000 years, and scientists still haven't figured out what causes this pattern. To get to the bottom of it, researchers turned to the deep sea. They studied changes in oxygen isotope ratios found in the tiny, fossilized shells of marine creatures. These tiny creatures live in the ocean, and their exoskeletons preserve clues about past climate, specifically changes in ice sheets. This allowed the researchers to track the beginning and end of ice ages over the past 800,000 years. By comparing the changes in the ice sheets with Earth's orbital changes, they found an incredible pattern. The key moments when Earth moved between ice ages and warmer periods were perfectly lined up with specific relationships between precession and obliquity. It turns out that the end of an ice age, called deglaciation, is closely linked to the way precession and obliquity align. But it's obliquity alone that seems to trigger the start of an ice age. This discovery is the key to understanding the 100,000-year cycle of ice ages. The researchers say it was always there, just waiting to be noticed. Before the discovery, people thought the timing of ice ages was more random. But this new study shows there's a clear, predictable pattern. This means we might actually be able to predict when ice ages will happen in the future. Right now, Earth's tilt is slowly decreasing, and in about 11,000 years, it'll hit its lowest point. Based on the team's calculation, the next ice age is expected to begin before then. At the same time, according to the latest reports, humans have already started pushing Earth's climate off its natural path by releasing greenhouse gases. Another thing scientists are warning about is a massive shift that's happening in the Atlantic Ocean, and it could drastically change the world's climate. The Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation is a system of ocean currents that moves warm and cold water around the planet. And right now, it is showing signs of weakening. What will happen if it collapses? Freezing temperatures in Europe, extreme weather across the world, shifting monsoons, and even an Amazon rainforest drying up. And the scariest part? Some researchers say there's a 95% chance this could happen before the end of the century. Think of the AMOC like a giant conveyor belt in the ocean. Warm, salty water from the tropics flows north towards Europe and North America. When it reaches colder areas, it cools down, becomes heavier, and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. This deep, cold water then moves southward, while fresh, warm water from the equator keeps flowing north to replace it. This system helps regulate global temperatures, keeps Europe's winters mild, and prevents the US East Coast from flooding. It also controls monsoon patterns that bring seasonal rain to parts of Africa, South America, and Asia. Without it, the world's climate would look completely different. Right now, melting ice from Greenland and Antarctica, along with increased rainfall and river runoff, is dumping too much fresh water into the North Atlantic. Since fresh water is lighter than seawater, it disrupts the sinking process that keeps the AMOC moving. If too much fresh water builds up, it will mess up the entire system. And once it collapses, there will be no reversing it, even if the climate later cools down. Scientists have seen two big warning signs. First of all, the warming of the ocean off the US East Coast, which suggests the AMOC is already slowing down. Plus, there's a cold blob of water south of Greenland. It might be a sign of the weakening of the ocean current, and that's exactly what happens before the system fails. What would happen if the AMOC fully shut down? Europe would enter an ice age. The AMOC plays an important role in keeping Europe's winters relatively mild by bringing warm water north. If this process stopped, Europe would be plunged into deep winter. London's climate would drop by 18 degrees Fahrenheit, making it feel like northern Canada. Stockholm could get up to 54 degrees Fahrenheit colder, turning it into Siberia-like conditions. And snow and ice would cover much of northern Europe year-round. Next, monsoons would shift, leading to severe droughts. The AMOC helps regulate tropical rainfall, especially in Africa, South America, and Asia. If it collapsed, West Africa's monsoons would shift or disappear, leading to devastating droughts and a massive food crisis. The Amazon rainforest could dry up, transforming into a savanna or grassland. In India and Southeast Asia, monsoon rains would disappear, and millions of people rely on them for agriculture. The US East Coast could see catastrophic flooding. With the AMOC weakening, water is already piling up along the US East Coast, triggering higher sea levels and stronger hurricanes. If the system shut down, sea levels would rise by up to 3.2 feet, which would make the coastal cities more vulnerable to flooding. Finally, hurricanes and extreme storms could become even more powerful because of warmer waters along the coast. Now, how close are we to disaster? For thousands of years, the AMOC has remained stable, but recent studies suggest it's weaker now than at any point in the past 1,600 years. Ocean temperatures are hitting record highs, and many researchers believe we are dangerously close to the tipping point. A study published in Nature claims that if greenhouse gas emissions continue at their current pace, there's a 95% chance that the AMOC will collapse before 2100. A sinkhole suddenly appeared in northern Siberia. This 115-foot deep hole popped up after some weird explosion that threw dirt and rocks almost 395 feet away. Since then, 2 more mystery holes have shown up in the area. People first thought it might be connected to digging for fossil fuels, since it's not far from the biggest gas field. But the search team's radar scan suggested it was probably a natural thing. The first research trip wasn't too successful because scientists couldn't get inside and take samples until the hole's sides and the water at the bottom froze. Scientists have been wondering about what caused these holes, and the ideas varied from space rocks hitting the ground to rising temperatures on Earth. One researcher suggested that the eruption had occurred due to the accumulation of pressure. A temperature decrease is often accompanied by alterations in the volume of specific chambers. These chambers contain methane. Such craters are specific to the Arctic region. Few other areas share these particular features. They all have table-like ground ice situated close to the surface, continuous permafrost saturated with methane, and unfrozen ground. Speaking of gases, a geologist suggested that the sinkhole might have been caused by gas hydrates. These gas hydrates are also thought to be responsible for mysterious happenings in the Bermuda Triangle. The Yamal Peninsula, similar to the Bermuda Triangle, has been a place known for unexplained events. Here, residents even claim to have seen the abominable snowman. Sinkholes can pop up out of nowhere. Some are massive enough to gobble up whole buildings. They happen when rock under the ground, like limestone, starts getting dissolved by the water it contains. As the rock melts away, these big holes, or caverns, start forming. When these caverns become too much for the land above to handle, bam! The surface caves in. Ice is melting like crazy. The Arctic is warming up way faster than the rest of the world, so ice sheets and glaciers are shrinking. As these chunks of ice melt, they pour fresh water into the oceans, raising sea levels and making Earth's crust sink. During the last ice age, those massive ice sheets pushed down on Earth's crust, making it bend and sink. When the ice started melting, the crust began to bounce back. But now, the ice is melting too fast for the crust to keep up. This sinking situation creates a dangerous loop. As land goes down, more seawater creeps in, causing more erosion and flooding. What about other parts of the world, such as China? It hosts the deepest and largest sinkhole on the planet. This sinkhole is 2,165 feet deep and holds a crazy amount of space, 130 million cubic meters to be exact. They call it the Heavenly Pit, and it's not just big, it has its own mini ecosystem. 1,285 different plant and animal species can be found there. There's an ancient forest and a thick jungle of plants in there. This formation is a double-nested sinkhole with two craters connected by a sloping edge. When it rains, a waterfall shows up at the mouth. It feeds an underground river and cave network. When you look down from space, you'll see these deep, dark marks on the green landscape, like a footprint. Some suggested that these formations could have been left by a meteorite smashing into Earth. Others said it had taken about 128,000 years for water to carve them out. It could have snuck into underground rivers and worn away the limestone rock. It turns out, locals have known about this place for ages, but the rest of the world only caught wind of it in 1994. British explorers tried to map out its underground cave system, but it's like a maze down there. After 5 tries in a 10-year span, the team couldn't handle the rushing river and had to throw in the towel. So, this deep, mysterious underworld remains one of China's biggest geological puzzles. The next one is Crveno Jezero in Croatia. This is a huge, mysterious pit. It's not like a regular lake. It's basically a giant hole that formed when the ground collapsed into what was once a massive cave. The walls are super steep and have this reddish tint because of iron in the soil, which makes it look pretty wild. Inside, there's a deep blue lake that's incredibly clear, but also super cold. What's really cool is that it houses a unique species of fish that's only found there. Plus, the water level goes up and down because of an underground stream. It's a bit of an adventure to explore the lake because it's surrounded by sheer cliffs that can drop rocks without warning. Let's shift our gaze to Venezuela's Sima Humboldt. This is a colossal sinkhole hanging out in a flat-topped mountain. This beast of a hole plunges down 1,030 feet. You can find an entire forest at its base. It's home to many plants and animals that only live there, like a unique frog called Stephania rhei. In 1974, people went on an exciting trip there for the first time, and they had to cut down trees so that helicopters could come and pick them up, kind of like something you'd see in an Indiana Jones movie. The second largest blue hole on the planet, known as Tamya, which translates to deep water in Mayan, is in Mexico, and that's where we're going. This underwater marvel was uncovered off the shores of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula in 2021. but the deets about this sinkhole have just surfaced recently. It's 900 feet deep, with the sides so steep they're almost 80 degrees. The entrance to this cavern is about 15 feet below sea level. Blue holes like Tamya are these natural wonders formed during the ice ages. When the sea level was way lower, rain and other natural elements eroded limestone, creating these deep vertical shafts. Then, as the oceans filled back up, these holes got submerged, turning into the mysterious blue holes we see today. They're called blue because the deep parts are darker than the shallower waters around them, making them look striking from above. Despite being low in oxygen, which usually makes it tough for sea life to thrive, blue holes are bustling with unique forms of life, especially bacteria. They're also gold mines for scientists because they can preserve ancient fossils in conditions you wouldn't normally find elsewhere. The team that discovered Tamya used scuba gear, sonar equipment, and water sample testing to map out the blue hole and study its water chemistry. They found that it was not just deep, but also massive, covering a surface area of 147,357 square feet at its widest point. This discovery was made partly thanks to local fishers who had been whispering about its existence. Now, scientists are diving deep into its secrets, hoping to learn more about the unique ecosystems that blue holes can host, and how they might give us clues about handling climate change and preserving marine life. Another spot is Dean's Blue Hole. This one is just off Long Island in the Bahamas. This underwater wonder goes deep, reaching 663 feet. The massive blue hole is surrounded by rocks, a lagoon, and a pristine white beach. Dean's Blue Hole isn't just a pretty sight, it's a hotspot for freediving enthusiasts. People come from all over the world to take the plunge into its crystal clear depths. There are multiple passages branching off from the main blue hole, leading into intricate cave systems and mysterious underwater rooms. It stands out also because it's the second deepest blue hole in the world, falling just behind the Dragon Hole in the South China Sea. This place is a big deal in the scuba diving world, especially since a swimmer set a world record here by diving 331 feet deep on a single breath, without any fins.
Did you know that the Pleistocene era was a really important time in Earth's history? It's when the last ice age happened, and glaciers covered a lot of the planet. This period of time lasted for about 2.6 million years, and ended around 11,700 years ago. What's even cooler is that modern humans, like us, had actually evolved during this time and had spread all over Earth before it ended. There were also some really fascinating animals that lived during the Pleistocene, like woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats. Unfortunately, many of them went extinct at the end of this era. Earth has had some pretty wild weather patterns over the last 2.4 billion years. Although the planet is mostly ice-free, we now cycle in and out of freezing ice ages. During these glacial periods, temperatures drop and huge areas of the planet get covered in ice. It all starts with a bit of snow, which then builds up over time. The ice reflects sunlight, making things even cooler. The result? Vast glaciers that slowly move toward the equator, changing the landscape as they go. And when the ice melts, sea levels rise again, and everything changes all over again. In total, there have been at least 5 ice ages so far. The first one was so intense that the whole planet turned into a huge snowball. Right now, we're actually in the middle of an ice age, but we're currently in a temporary warm spell that started around 11,000 years ago. These warm periods are called interglacials, and we're not quite sure how long they last. There are still massive ice sheets covering Antarctica and Greenland that hold 75% of Earth's fresh water. When these finally melt, it'll mark the end of the current ice age. Earth's temperature is affected by something called the Milankovitch cycles. Basically, the amount of heat we receive from the sun changes over years, decades, and millennia because of Earth's orbit, tilt, and axis angle. There are 3 different patterns to these cycles. The first is called eccentricity, which is all about the shape of our orbit. The second is obliquity, which has to do with the tilt of the Earth. And the third is precession, which is like a wobble as Earth spins. Depending on where we are in these cycles, we might experience colder or warmer temperatures. But other things, like the position of continents and the atmosphere, also play a role in our planet's fate. For example, our planet's orbit is not quite circular. It's actually a bit elongated, shaped almost like an egg. That means we're sometimes a little closer or farther from the sun, depending on the time of year. We call the point farthest away from the sun the apogee, and the closest point is the perigee. When we're at the apogee, we're moving away from the sun, but gravity eventually pulls us back toward it. This means our orbit changes a little each time, gradually shifting our position relative to the sun. Don't worry, even though the orbit changes over thousands of years, it doesn't have a big impact on our day-to-day lives. Changes in Earth's orbit can affect how much sunlight we get during the summer. This means that ice sheets in the northern hemisphere will melt less, and over time, they actually start to grow. As they grow, they reflect even more sunlight, which makes the climate even cooler and spreads the ice even farther. This process can last for a really long time, like 10,000 to 20,000 years, and eventually it brings the planet into its next freezing season. As for the next ice age, scientists believe it might be postponed indefinitely. They've found that our human interaction with the environment, like the use of fuels, could delay the next ice age by up to 100,000 years. Earth's past ice ages were linked to the amount of solar radiation and carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere, and this research can even help us predict future cycles. It's amazing to think that our actions now could affect Earth's future for thousands of years to come. And while it's not really important when the next ice age begins, it's pretty cool to know that humans have the power to shape the future on a geological timescale. Ice ages have had a huge impact on our planet and human civilization. So it's fascinating to think how our actions now might change things, maybe even for the better. What did life look like on our planet during the last ice age, though? Well, North America, for instance, was home to some huge creatures. Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, and mastodons were just a few of them. And get this, even Europe had an 11-foot tall flightless bird that weighed almost as much as a polar bear. Meanwhile, down under in Australia, there was a giant lizard that lived in all sorts of habitats during the same time period. Even though some animals from the Pleistocene era aren't around anymore, you might recognize many of those that are still around today. In Alaska, for example, you can still find brown bears, caribou, and wolves. People just like us actually lived through the Ice Age too. Our species, Homo sapiens, has been around for about 300,000 years. And we've spread all around the world since then. Some of our ancestors stayed in Africa during the Ice Age and didn't feel the full effects of the cold. And others ventured out into other parts of the world, even into the chilly glacial environments of Europe. Our early relatives, like the Neanderthals in Europe, and the mysterious Denisovians in Asia, were also around during this time. Although they seem to have gone extinct before the end of the Ice Age, it's pretty amazing to think about all those different hominids that roamed Earth during that period. What's also fascinating is how our species managed to survive the Ice Age, while some of our cousins didn't. Some experts believe that our adaptability, social and communication skills, and the use of tools played a huge role in it. And guess what? Humans didn't just hunker down during that time. We actually moved into new areas. Fossilized footprints found at White Sands National Park in New Mexico prove that humans have been in North America since at least 23,000 years ago. That's close to the peak of the last ice age. While a full-blown ice age might still be far away, there is a possibility of a mini ice age coming our way. Some scientists believe that in about 10 years, we might experience a significant drop in solar activity, leading to colder temperatures in the northern hemisphere. This could result in conditions similar to the Little Ice Age in the late 17th century, when the Thames River in the UK froze over. While scientists aren't quite sure what caused that cooling, it's fascinating to think about the potential changes. We've done it before, so we know that humans will most likely survive the next real ice age, even if we don't manage to figure out a way to stop the next freezing era. But it would come at a high cost. All the ice that would cover most of the northern hemisphere would have to come from oceans, which would cause the sea level to drop. This could mean more land for some countries, but it would also create other problems. Sea levels going down might seem like a great thing at first, but actually, it could lead to some challenges. Having been covered with salt water for thousands of years, the new land might not be very fertile. This means it wouldn't be great for growing crops, and we'd have to find other ways to feed ourselves. Back when humans first started out, there weren't many of us, and there was plenty of food. Now, with over 7 billion people on the planet, it's a different story. We'll need to be resourceful to make sure everyone has enough food to eat.
Hey, want to take a wild trip back in time to the Jurassic or Cambrian era? Trust me, it's going to be a wild ride, but surviving in those ancient environments would require some serious skills. At the start of the Cambrian era, the air would be as thin as at the base camp of Mount Everest, but the climate was actually pretty chill and consistent back then. However, there was one teeny tiny problem: no land plants or animals to feast on. So forget about firing up the grill for a juicy steak. Instead, you'd have to come up with creative ways to catch trilobites and other funky-looking shellfish. Good luck finding a spear without any wood or a fishing net without any plant fibers. And get ready to eat them raw, unless you can figure out how to extract oil from these creatures or burn dry seaweed. But wait, if you're looking for a more comfortable existence, you gotta travel to 100 million years ago, to the Silurian period. Here, things start to get a bit easier. The air is still thin, but there's a bit more oxygen to go around. Plus, the climate is warmer and cozier. Simple land plants have finally made their debut. Not only that, but the first bony fish also show up on the scene, so you might actually find something more palatable to munch on. Just watch out for those prehistoric millipedes and spider-like creatures that share the land with you. They might not be the best dinner companions. Yeah, it all sounds fun and feasible, but let's talk a bit more about this crazy idea of instant transportation. If you magically appeared in a different time, the first thing you'd have to worry about is the amount of oxygen in the air. Now, looking at that fancy graph up there, it's pretty clear that oxygen levels used to be super low before about 0.85 billion years ago. Like, we're talking just a few % of the atmosphere. And there wasn't even any O2 in the air until this event called the Great Oxygenation happened about 2.3 billion years ago. So if you ended up back then, surviving would totally depend on how fit you are. If the oxygen concentration was less than 10%, you'd probably pass out, but not pass away. If it was just above 10%, you might be able to function, but you wouldn't exactly be living your best life. Based on oxygen alone, it seems like you could survive if you showed up around 0.75 billion years ago, give or take a few million years. Now let's talk about the cool stuff on land. The first land plants didn't show up until around 450 million years ago during the Ordovician period. Before that, there were some large algae hanging around, mostly in the range of 500 to 600 million years ago. But there wasn't a whole lot going on until those land plants came along. Other forms of life didn't start showing up on land until closer to 300 to 400 million years ago. But there was this critter, a myriapod, that lived around 428 million years ago, and it was one of the earliest land dwellers. I mean, if you lived back then, you'd have to come up with fancy recipes featuring myriapods. Not exactly mouth-watering. Don't worry if you find yourself back in time before all that land action. Around 500 to 600 million years ago, the oceans were teeming with life. There were these creatures called the Ediacaran fauna, and they were some of the first well-preserved organisms. Some of them probably hung out in the shallow areas near the shore, so you might be able to get your hands on them for a meal. But remember, there weren't any land plants yet, so you'd probably have to eat them raw and with no potatoes on the side. You'd have a sort of prehistoric sashimi on your plate. Now, around 500 million years ago, things started to get really interesting in the oceans after something called the Cambrian explosion. If you ended up in the Cambrian period, you'd have all sorts of weird animals to catch in the coastal zones. Check out the fossils from the Burgess Shale for some wild ideas. Look at these brachiopods, arthropods, and even worm-like critters. But again, no woody land plants at this point, so your meals would mostly consist of raw arthropods and algae. Alrighty, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of ice ages. It's when the Earth gets super chilly for a ridiculously long time, like millions and millions of years. This causes giant ice sheets and glaciers to spread all over the place, covering massive areas of the planet's surface. Believe it or not, our planet has experienced at least 5 major ice ages. The very first one happened about 2 billion years ago and lasted for 300 million years. The most recent ice age kicked off at around 2.6 million years ago, and we're technically still in it. So, we're in the middle of an ice age, but we're not currently living in an icy wonderland. That's because we're currently in an interglacial period. During an ice age, temperatures go through ups and downs. When it's warmer, those ice sheets and glaciers start to melt, creating what we call interglacials. And when it gets colder, they expand again, which we call glacials. So right now, we're enjoying the warm interglacial period of the most recent ice age, which kicked off around 11,000 years ago. When people mention the ice age, they're usually talking about the last glacial period that started around 115,000 years ago and ended roughly 11,000 years ago when our current interglacial period began. During that glacial period, things were way cooler than they are now. At its peak, when ice sheets covered most of North America, the average global temperature was about 46 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a whole 11 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than today's global average temperature. That temperature difference may not seem like much, but it was enough to turn most of North America and Eurasia into ice-covered landscapes. The Earth was also a lot drier, and sea levels were way lower because most of the water was trapped in those ice sheets. We're talking vast steppes, dry, grassy plains as far as the eye can see. And let's not forget about the savannas, warm, grassy plains, and deserts that were also part of the icy scene. During the Ice Age, there were some familiar critters roaming around, like brown bears, caribou, and wolves. But there were also some mega cool creatures that sadly went extinct when the Ice Age came to an end. We're talking mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, and giant ground sloths. Now, there are a bunch of theories floating around about why these magnificent beasts bit the dust. One idea is that us humans hunted them into extinction when we crossed paths with these megafauna. Our species, Homo sapiens, actually survived the Ice Age. We've been kicking it on this planet for around 300,000 years now, starting out in Africa and then spreading our awesomeness all over the globe. Some of our ancestors stayed put in Africa and didn't experience the full icy effects. Others ventured into different parts of the world, even braving the freezing cold of Europe's glacial environments. But we weren't the only ones out there. At the beginning of the Ice Age, there were other hominids, our closer relatives, scattered across Eurasia. We had the Neanderthals chilling in Europe, and the mysterious Denisovans hanging out in Asia. Sadly, both of these groups seems to have vanished before the Ice Age wrapped up. Now, there are countless theories about how our species managed to survive the Ice Age while our hominin buddies didn't make it. Some believe it's because we're ridiculously adaptable and used our social skills, communication, and nifty tools to our advantage. And get this, humans didn't just hunker down during the Ice Age. Nope, we explored new territories and made ourselves at home. For the longest time, folks thought humans didn't set foot in North America until after the ice sheets started melting. Fossilized footprints discovered at White Sands National Park in New Mexico prove that humans have been rocking it in North America for at least 23,000 years, right around the peak of the last ice age.
Yep, there's ice all around, as far as the eye can see. A white desert covers the entrance to your cave, the one where you and a bunch of other settlers live. Everyone's gathered around a fire pit, trying to keep warm, telling each other stories about how much snow they saw the other day. Some are running around playing tag, throwing sticks, whatever people used to do for fun 300,000 years ago. You're one of the earliest Homo sapiens to ever walk the earth. Others are sleeping or just resting their eyes. All around the cave, all you can hear are stomachs rumbling, sounds like a wild animal lurking around. You look out the mouth of the cave and see that the storm has cleared. Time to grab some tools and head out as a group. In the open wilderness, you find some berries covered in snow and plants that might be edible. But it's not enough to feed the whole tribe. It's the Ice Age, and there's not much vegetation growing anywhere. One of your friends spots some large footprints in the snow. The chase is on. You can't tell what it is, but it should be enough to feed everyone for a couple of days. As you go deeper into the snow-covered forest, you hear a growl behind you. You hope it's your stomach, but you look behind you and suddenly black out. An ice age is a period when large sheets of ice cover everything, changing the Earth permanently. It's partly responsible for the raising and lowering of sea levels, as well as the current layout of the continents. Picture monster-thick ice sheets spread across what's now Canada, Scandinavia, Russia, and even South America. That's all caused sea levels to change drastically, and temperatures around the world fell dramatically. And I'm not talking about just one ice age. There were a bunch of them. Scientists say there have been 5 major ice ages throughout history, lasting for millions of years. And we're in the middle of one right now. Relax, don't panic. It doesn't mean we're all going to be sleeping next to bonfires, trying to keep warm after being out all day looking for woolly mammoths. And no, there won't be a massive geological ice storm that freezes everything in its path. Ice ages have warmer periods in them that come and go, lasting for tens of thousands of years. In fact, billions of years ago, the Earth was one giant snowball with no life on it. And the sun back then was also just a cute little fireball without enough heat to melt all that ice. But as the sun got bigger and hotter, Earth's ice slowly melted away, leaving the green and blue ball we have today. We're living in the Quaternary Ice Age that's been going on for the past 2.6 million years, and counting. Some animals have thrived in this latest ice age, like whales and sharks. They've been at the top of the food chain for ages. Under them are seals, certain kinds of fish, otters, all the way down to tiny plankton. Up on the cold surface, mammals had to grow thick and shaggy fur just to stay warm. Ancient mammoths, rhinos, and bison were known to have thick rugs on them. They looked awesome. They were herbivores and ate small shrubs and whatever grass they could find. But several thousand years ago, temperatures began to rise, and most of these animals became extinct. The ones that remained evolved into the elephants, hippos, and rhinos we have today. You wake up from your blackout and find yourself face to face with a creature that kind of looks like a modern-day bobcat, except it's much bigger and furrier. It's a smilodon, an epic version of a saber-toothed cat with a mean look. It's around the same size as a male lion and has 2 front fangs that make me think twice before leaving the safety of my cave. They look scary, But scientists think their bite wasn't as powerful as today's tigers or lions. What made them tough were their giant forearms used to wrestle down anyone who got on their nerves. In packs, they were even able to take down mammoths. Either way, you don't want to be waking up next to this kitty. It's staring you down, ready to pounce. But you and your friends keep calm and slowly back off. You get the genius idea to throw a rock to distract it, then run. Nowadays, it's near impossible for a human to outsprint a lion or tiger, but humans back then were much fitter. Once the danger's over, everyone continues to look for food. It's getting dark, and you haven't found anything to bring back to the cave. Suddenly, you smell something burning. Way off in the distance, you see a thin column of smoke rising into the sky. Another settlement? You and your friends look at each other and approach the smoke cautiously. Homo sapiens first came into being about 200 or 300 years ago. But human history didn't just pop up out of nowhere. As far back as 7 million years ago, some of us decided to call it quits. We left our chimpanzee ancestors in the jungle and started doing our own thing. And that didn't just happen once. Over those next millions of years, there were over 20 different human species. Some were our ancestors, some were twigs from a completely different branch. Some were tiny, others better adapted for hot or cold weather. Before you know it, you see a group of Neanderthals cooking some meat, sharpening their tools. Neanderthals were the first to migrate to Europe. Scientists believe they were around somewhere between 40,000 to 400,000 years ago. They occupied all areas between Europe and Asia, while Homo sapiens, that's us, were still all the way down in Africa. You enter their camp and immediately see the differences between each other. They're stocky and look a bit different, but there are some similarities, like flat teeth for chewing and gnawing and big skulls for their big brains. They even have clothes on, like you. According to archaeologists, they lived in shelters and made tools out of stone, sticks, and bones. They welcome you inside and give you a tour like no other. You're officially meeting another human species. They take you inside their cave and show you some of their cave paintings. They were the first artists of their time. Many of their galleries are still around today, like the ones in caves in Spain. You know their style: minimalist paintings of deer, a large handprint. They also dabbled a bit in jewelry making. They made necklaces out of eagle talons and animal fangs. They were also probably the first ones to harness the power of fire. Did they discover it when a bolt of lightning hit a tree? Or when one of them dropped a rock on another rock, creating a spark? No one really knows. But they were able to recreate it and use it to keep warm, to cook food, to see in the darkness, and to protect themselves. After the nice tour, you hang around the campfire to keep warm. They even offer you some extra clothes for the journey home, mostly thick, shaggy mammoth coats. If only you could talk to each other, that would be awesome. But it's getting dark, and you need to head back to the tribe. You say your goodbyes and thank them for teaching you how to draw a deer, and for that sack of food they gave you. The Ice Age was important for the development of the modern Homo sapiens. Because of the extreme cold and other harsh conditions, they had to adapt to survive, be extra clever and innovative. They developed advanced tools and even used bone needles to sew warm clothing. They may have hosted the first ever runway show. When the climate started to get warmer, they developed farming techniques to sustain themselves and mainly settled near large bodies of water like rivers or lakes, while others opted to be near seas and oceans. They, we, were even the first to domesticate animals. Fast forward a few 100,000 years and here we are. In the winter of 2019, the American Midwest and Northeast turned into a real-life disaster movie. I'm talking about that time when temperatures dropped to negative 63 degrees Fahrenheit. There were massive flight cancellations and power outages, dozens of injured people, and shut down schools and offices. Simply going outside became highly risky. And if you're looking for someone to blame for all this, I've got 2 words for you: polar vortex. That's not some scary storm, but a huge mass of cold air that's normally spinning counterclockwise around the poles. When it's summer up in the northern hemisphere, the vortex stays further north, and in the winter, it heads south a bit. The term polar vortex has been around since the late 1940s. It shows up every winter and calls it quits in the spring. But for about the last 20 years, this polar vortex has been acting weird in the middle of winter. It looks like it either splits or becomes displaced once every other year. At the bottom of this vortex is what they call the polar front, or the polar jet stream. This jet stream moves from west to east, which is why places like the northeastern part of North America get hammered by that chilly polar vortex weather. These jet streams zip along because of differences in temperature and the Earth's spin. When there's a big gap in temperatures, the winds really pick up speed. In spots like the equator, where the sun's rays are more intense, the air heats up and starts to rise. And as it goes up, it leaves behind a sort of empty space, taking in air from all around, kind of like a huge vacuum cleaner. But over at the poles, where it's way chillier, the air shrinks and sinks, forming areas of high pressure. It's like a bunch of air molecules trying to spread out, like a group of school kids on a big field. So you've got these 2 forces at play: warm air rising and cold air sinking. Air wants to zoom from the poles down to the equator with this setup. The jet streams tend to hang out where airplanes fly, about 30,000 feet in the air. Pilots often use them to zoom across the sky faster and save some fuel. But these jet streams aren't always the good guys, as they can bring all sorts of weather changes, like cold snaps and heat waves. When the polar jet stream is strong and cruising at about the same level as the vortex, it kind of locks in that cold Arctic air within the Arctic Circle. Every now and then, the jet stream takes a chill pill and starts moving around the planet in a wavy pattern called Arctic oscillations. This creates peaks and troughs that allow warmer air from down south to head north, and the chilly Arctic air to take a trip south. In the northern hemisphere, there are 2 polar vortexes, one in the lower atmosphere, known as the troposphere, and another higher up in the stratosphere. The stratospheric vortex forms as cold, dense air sinks and twirls near the North Pole. The mightier the vortex, the quicker it spins, keeping cold air locked over the high latitudes. When someone or something messes with the polar vortex, it goes haywire. Picture a spinning top. Give the table a shake and it'll start wobbling. When the polar vortex loses strength, it can't corral the cold air anymore. So, blasts of icy Arctic air surge southward over North America. The polar vortex isn't a fixed object, but more like a living being. It gets stirred up by ripples on Earth's surface, triggered by stuff like air flowing over mountains or across land and sea, all warming up differently. If our planet were as smooth as glass, with oceans wrapping all around, the polar vortex would just chill out, never breaking up. But every time a wave smacks into it, it gives the vortex a push. Sometimes, one of these waves packs enough punch to shove the vortex off the pole or even spin it in reverse. And when that happens, the temperature in the polar stratosphere can skyrocket by a whopping 50 degrees in just a week. The Arctic's polar vortex started spinning in the opposite direction in March 2024 and got scientists worried. It's one of the 6 strongest flips since the 70s. This time around, it hasn't caused any chaos. Sometimes the waves of air affecting the vortex get strong enough to split it into 2 parts, kind of like how a cell divides. They're called daughter vortices, and they even add more chaos to the mix. When the vortex splits, one chunk usually heads over Siberia, while the other cruises over North America. Once that split goes down, the jet stream in the troposphere above the Atlantic decides to take a southern vacation. That jet stream usually acts like a bouncer, keeping the chilly Arctic air up near the pole. But when it heads south, that Arctic air gets a green light to crash the party in places like the East Coast, the Midwest, and even Western Europe. The storms that usually ride along with the jet stream follow along and head south too. They take their time to get organized and catch up with the new path of the jet. So, instead of hitting up Canada like they usually do, they swing by New York and Chicago for a change of scenery. Scientists still don't know why the polar vortex doesn't mess with the U.S. Pacific coast. It might have something to do with where the jet streams hang out in each basin. Over in the Atlantic, the jet stream kicks it at higher latitudes, while in the Pacific, it's chilling closer to the equator. It might also have to do with the landscape. In the Atlantic, the air has zipped over the Rocky Mountains, stirring up waves off tall peaks that mess with the jet stream. But in the Pacific, the jet stream is away from any big mountains that could cause trouble. The recent reversal of the polar vortex is unlikely to make the temperatures drop extremely, but scientists aren't sure what's going to happen to the polar jet stream in the future. They're concerned that the chilly polar air might make more trips down to the mid-latitudes and bring along more chilly spells in the long run. So it's better to be prepared. When the news tells you there's a huge winter storm coming and power outages are highly likely, fill your bathtub with water. If you have an electric water pump, it won't work and you'll run out of water soon. Gas stations also run on electricity, so fill your car tank before the storm hits to have some emergency gas. When the storm arrives and you're locked in, put on several layers of warm clothes, thermal wear, a warm shirt, a sweater, and insulated pants and woolen socks. Don't forget mittens so the heat doesn't escape through your hands. Hang dark blankets on your windows to draw in heat. Make sure your doors and windows are closed well, and put some towels under them to prevent drafts. Your basement is probably more insulated by the ground, so it could be a good place to spend the night. To warm up the cold winter bed in your home, fill a bottle with hot water and place it in your core region under the cover. The water will heat up your vital fluids traveling through your body, reaching all the extremities and warming you up in no time. You can also wrap your pajamas around the bottle before putting them on for an extra effect. When the power comes back on, check all your appliances and electronics before turning on the main power switch. They must be unplugged to avoid power surge damage. As you turn the water supply back on, keep the taps on the lowest level of your house closed to let the air out from the upper taps.
Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to embark on an incredible journey. With the help of super smart scientists and their studies, we've asked AI to take us back a mind-blowing 2 billion years in time and show us what our awesome Earth looked like. So buckle up and let's find out. Once upon a time, way back when Earth was just a baby, around 4.5 billion years ago, hopping into a time machine and paying a visit would have been a big mistake. The whole place was a hot mess. First of all, the ground was still all gooey and molten, so landing your time machine would have been a major risk. Now, as soon as you tried to get out, you would see a completely different Earth compared to what we know today. The landscape is a patchwork of rugged mountains, sparkling seas, and vast stretches of land. Picture massive volcanoes erupting in fiery bursts, shooting gases and ash into the air. It's like a crazy fireworks show. And even if you had a fancy new machine that could hover and had special shields to handle the heat, you'd still have a hard time breathing. You see, the early Earth's atmosphere is a bit moody. Thick clouds hang in the sky, casting mysterious shadows on the land below. The air is as thin as a whisper and filled with all sorts of interesting gases like hydrogen and helium. Carbon dioxide swirls around, giving everything a vibrant green hue. Water vapor drifts through the air, creating a sense of humidity and a refreshing mist. Oh, and there might be a hint of ammonia and methane just to keep things interesting. Lots of cool gases, huh? But wait, there's something missing. Oxygen. So if you take a deep breath, you won't feel that familiar rush of air filling your lungs. On land, there are no lush forests or towering trees just yet. Instead, you find rugged, rocky terrains. Some of these ancient rocks bear the marks of intense forces, collisions and earthquakes that have shaped the land over millions of years. But amidst all this ancient beauty, something amazing is about to happen. Life, in its early stages, is evolving and preparing for its grand entrance. Simple organisms, like algae and bacteria, rule the scene. They thrive in the oceans, using the abundant carbon dioxide to grow and multiply. The waters are teeming with activity, with colorful, microscopic life forms buzzing around like a busy city. These tiny organisms are working hard, releasing oxygen as they go about their business. They're like little factories, slowly changing the composition of the atmosphere. So this is what the early Earth looked like, more or less. But why was it so nasty? And how could it have changed so much since then? You see, Earth's heat came from all sorts of crazy things happening during its formation. First off, there was some serious heat already packed into the objects that came together to make our planet. Then, as Earth grew bigger and stronger, its gravitational force got a major power boost. It pulled in more stuff, but it also gave Earth a massive bear hug, squeezing everything tightly. And you know what happens when things get squeezed? They heat up like a pressure cooker. This crazy heating had a huge impact on Earth's structure. Picture Earth as a mixed-up bag of rocks, metals, and minerals. But as things heated up, the rocks and metals got so toasty that they melted. And guess what? The denser metals sank to the center and became Earth's core, while the lighter rocky stuff floated up to become the crust and mantle. It was like Earth decided to unmix itself, creating separate layers. Scientists call this wild separation differentiation. But the heating didn't stop there. With all this mixing and moving around, Earth got even hotter. It was like turning up the heat in a giant planetary oven. All this crazy heat had some serious consequences. Earth's high temperature made everything super speedy. Tectonic plates were dancing like there was no tomorrow, making the surface super active and full of geological shenanigans. Oh, and that's not all. Earth also got showered by some serious cosmic visitors. Imagine this. While Earth was busy gathering up all sorts of space debris during its formation, the rest of the solar system was causing some major chaos. Saturn and Jupiter decided to shake things up by changing their orbits, sending a whole bunch of massive objects hurtling towards poor Earth. These collisions were no joke. They packed a punch that melted minerals in Earth's crust and even vaporized them. These booms were so intense that they even blew gases right out of Earth's atmosphere. Talk about a wild fireworks show. Believe it or not, we can still spot ancient battle scars from these collisions. It takes some careful detective work, but we can catch a glimpse of their aftermath. For example, there's this place called the Manitsok Crater in Greenland. Even though there's no actual crater to see, we can examine rocks that were chilling 12.5 to 15.5 miles below Earth's surface back in the day. And guess what? They bear the marks of intense and sudden shock. Now that's some tough neighborhood. The wildest collision of them all was with a planet called Theia. Theia, about the size of Mars, crashed into Earth with a mighty bam! It was a colossal event that changed everything. Theia's metal core fused with Earth's core, while the outer layers of both planets got shattered and tossed into space. The result? A beautiful ring of debris encircling Earth. Now here's the coolest part. That debris didn't just float around forever. It started to come together, like puzzle pieces finding their match. And voila, we got our very own moon. Can you believe it? And this incredible moon-making process might have taken as little as 10 years or even less. Crazy, isn't it? Scientists call this whole moon-forming extravaganza the giant impact hypothesis. So next time you gaze at the moon in the night sky, remember that it's actually a huge chunk of our own planet. And by the way, Earth also had quite the adventure trying to create its atmosphere. In the beginning, our planet's first attempt at an atmosphere didn't go so well. It had a thin layer of hydrogen and helium that came along with all the stuff it gathered. But those gases were like sneaky escape artists and decided to float away into space. Bye-bye, gases. Luckily, Earth didn't give up. It went for a second round, and this time it was much more successful. Volcanic eruptions came to the rescue. They spewed out all kinds of gases like water vapor, carbon dioxide, and a whole bunch of other funky ones. Even meteorites and comets joined the party, bringing lots of water and nitrogen to the mix. Earth's atmosphere was becoming quite the party. But here's the funny thing. There was no oxygen to be found during the second experiment. Nope, not a single breath of it. The oxygen that was produced by the sun's rays splitting water molecules got gobbled up by chemical reactions faster than you can say, oxy-bummer. It wasn't until Earth's third experiment came along, life, that things started to change. Photosynthetic organisms took center stage and used all that carbon dioxide in the air to make their food. And guess what? They released oxygen as a sidekick, Eventually, the organism started belting out so much oxygen that it overwhelmed the reactions, and it began to fill up the atmosphere. It took a while, though, and it wasn't until about 350 million years ago that we got the oxygen levels we have today. About 21% of the air we breathe. So, from fiery volcanoes to mysterious oceans, this glimpse into the past reveals an Earth vastly different from the one we know today. It's fascinating to explore the ancient landscapes and imagine the early stages of life taking shape. Thanks to AI, we can catch a glimpse of Earth's remarkable history and appreciate the wonders of our ever-changing planet. So, stay tuned for more interesting journeys. Imagine you're looking up at the sky on a clear night, and you see all those beautiful stars twinkling up there. Well, one of them is Betelgeuse, a celebrity among stars. If you want to catch a glimpse of it, look up at the Orion constellation. It low-key looks like an archer holding a bow, and you can spot Betelgeuse as the reddish-orange dot on their shoulder. It's one of the brightest stars in the sky, so it's hard to miss. Betelgeuse is not your ordinary star. First of all, it's gigantic, up to 1,000 times the size of our sun. Can you imagine that? It's so enormous that if we could somehow replace our sun with Betelgeuse, it would engulf all the inner planets, including Earth. And here's another fun fact. When we look at Betelgeuse, we're actually looking back in time. Yep, you heard it right. Betelgeuse is about 600 light years away from us, so the light we see today actually left the star 600 years ago. It has quite a history. This star has been shining brightly for millions of years. Long, long ago, even before smartphones and telescopes, ancient Sumerians were the first to spot Betelgeuse in the sky, and it's been a diva this entire time. For example, in 1866, Betelgeuse became one of the brightest stars in the night sky. It was so dazzling that people could see it even during the day. Astronomers all around the world went bananas documenting this extraordinary event. Since then, Betelgeuse has been playing hide-and-seek with us. It all started when Betelgeuse started to dim back in 2019. Since then, it likes to dim and brighten sporadically. But these changes in brightness tell us about something important. As we mentioned, Betelgeuse was always a bit of a troublemaker. It's been living a fast and furious life. Because of that, it has been burning its fuel at an incredibly fast rate. The changes in the star's brightness are clues that Betelgeuse is approaching the end of its life cycle. The drama intensified when the Hubble Space Telescope snapped jaw-dropping images of Betelgeuse, like it was getting ready to blow its top. All this made scientists think that the star is close to retiring in a dramatic way. It's about to go supernova. So picture a star partying hard, powered by the fusion of hydrogen atoms. It's like the star's own energy drink, but just like any party, the fuel starts to run out. That's when things get interesting. As the star guzzles up its hydrogen fuel, it slowly begins to run on empty. It can't sustain itself anymore. So now, it's time for the grand finale. This finale is called supernova. The star collapses in on itself like a deflating balloon. The pressure and temperature inside skyrocket to mind-boggling levels, and this celestial tantrum triggers a colossal bang. So you can see why observing Betelgeuse is like having a front-row seat to the spectacular drama. But here's the big question. When will this happen? Well, the answer is not as simple as setting a timer. You see, stars have their own schedules, and Betelgeuse is no different. It could be tomorrow, or it could be thousands of years from now. Scientists have come up with only a rough estimate. They believe that Betelgeuse will go supernova within the next 100,000 years. Quite a spread, huh? Sure, that sounds like forever to us, tiny humans. But in the vastness of the universe, it's just a blink of an eye. But there's a chance, just a tiny chance, that Betelgeuse could surprise us all and go supernova much sooner. Considering its dips in brightness, we might be in for a show within the next few hundred years. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, if Betelgeuse does go kaboom, what will happen? We'll get ready for a show like no other, folks. When a star collapses under its own weight, it unleashes a cosmic firework of epic proportions. The star releases a crazy amount of energy in the form of light and heat. Betelgeuse's supernova is going to be extra special. It's like the superstar of supernovas. It will shine so brightly that it might even outshine the other stars in the sky. Picture that, Betelgeuse stealing the spotlight. The show could be so bright that you won't need a telescope to catch a glimpse. Nope, you'll be able to see it with a naked eye. It might even be visible during the day, making the sky look like it's hosting the coolest rave ever. After that, the supernova will keep us entertained for weeks. It will be like having a second moon in the sky, shining as bright as the full thing. Imagine that, 2 moons dancing together in the night. After several weeks of lighting up the night sky, Betelgeuse's supernova will slowly fade away, but it would leave behind a souvenir, an ethereal remnant. It's like a fading memory of the star's epic performance. This remnant, too, would slowly fade away over the course of several months. But it's not just about the light show. The boom will send out powerful shockwaves, and we might actually feel them right here on Earth. It's like the universe giving us a gentle tap on the shoulder, saying, "Hey, look at this amazing spectacle. How dangerous will it be for us?" Well, we know that Betelgeuse's supernova would send dust and gas shooting into the atmosphere. It's like a big space sneeze. And this sneeze could cause a decrease in global temperatures. We're talking serious climate impact here. It could even lead to a mini ice age. But these are just assumptions. We don't know for sure if the consequences will really be that serious. But, of course, we want to be prepared for this event just in case. That's why scientists are studying Betelgeuse closely. But, in addition to serious scientific research, astronomers also have a blast of celestial comedy. Jokes are flying left and right. Someone has even created a Betelgeuse status account, which you can check yourself. So, as you can see, the star is keeping us on our toes. Astronomers keep observing it, and they need our help too. They want us to keep an eye on Betelgeuse and report any changes we see. How do you do that? First off, channel your inner astronomer and observe Betelgeuse. Take a peek at the star and note down what you see. Is it twinkling, shining, or feeling a bit dim? Jot it all down. Then be a superstar yourself and report your observations to the astronomers. Your observations will help them track Betelgeuse's journey towards its big supernova moment. You can also join in on some citizen science projects. They're super fun and easy, trust me. One cool project you can jump into is the Betelgeuse Brightness Monitor. By participating, you help scientists keep tabs on how bright Betelgeuse is shining. Your contribution can make a real difference. So join the monitoring team. You'll be part of something amazing, and who knows, your observations might even help predict when Betelgeuse will show off its supernova magic. By doing that, we can assist them in monitoring this superstar and learn more about the fascinating world of stars. But that's how we can help scientists to predict this event. Now, how can you personally prepare for it? First things first, you'll need the right gear to catch all the supernova action. A trusty telescope is like your front row ticket to the starry show. It'll bring you up close and personal with Betelgeuse's performance. And remember, you'll need special eyewear to shield your eyes from the intense burst of light. Safety first. And of course, prepare in case it decides to mess with our climate. Stock up on essentials, like warm clothes and supplies, just in case we experience a mini ice age. But let's just hope it won't happen. So keep your eyes on the night sky, my friends. Betelgeuse may not be ready to blow up just yet, but when it does, it will be a sight to behold. Until then, let's enjoy the twinkling stars. And remember, there's always something extraordinary happening in the vastness of space.
The Arctic is disappearing. In just a few years, the North Pole could see its first ice-free summer in the last 125,000 years. But a bold new experiment might turn back the clock. Scientists are refreezing the Arctic. If they succeed, they could save the North Pole. But if they fail, they could trigger unforeseen disasters. So, which way would things go? Well, here's some backstory. Deep in the Arctic, temperatures drop so low that metal cracks and winds scream across the ice. In winter, it's minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit on average. But despite the seemingly extreme cold, it's actually melting, warming 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the planet. Now, ice is like Earth's natural mirror. It reflects sunlight back into space, keeping the planet cool. When it melts, it exposes the dark ocean underneath. The ocean absorbs sunlight instead of reflecting it, and it spreads all across the planet. This warms the planet even faster, melting even more ice. It's a vicious cycle, and if it continues, we'll reach a point where the ice won't come back. That thick, ancient ice that has covered the North Pole for thousands of years is already 95% gone. It's been disappearing since the 1980s. The ice that remains there now is thin and fragile, and when it disappears, it will trigger a dangerous chain reaction. Meanwhile, a group of researchers from a UK startup called Real Ice is out there trying to slow down or even reverse the melting of the Arctic. The project takes place in a tiny frozen village in Canada called Cambridge Bay. Real Ice wants to break the vicious cycle, and here's their plan. First, they drill through the existing ice and place an underwater pump beneath it. Then they pump seawater onto the ice surface, where it quickly freezes into an extra thick layer. Finally, they remove snow from the ice, which usually acts like a blanket, preventing further freezing. After that, ice keeps growing, stronger, thicker, and harder to melt. It's a simple idea inspired by nature itself. Ice naturally forms this way in some Arctic regions, but now scientists want to do it on a massive scale. So far, it appears to be working. Between January and May 2024, they covered around 44,000 square feet of ice, and it became 20 inches thicker on average. And in November 2024, they started a new round of tests. In the first 10 days of the trial, the ice was already 4 inches thicker. Now they'll return in May 2025 to check out how things are going. They think it's going to get between around 16 to 31 inches of it during the Arctic winter. It's a small start, admittedly, but if they can prove it works, their plan is to expand across an area more than twice the size of California, about 386,000 square miles of ice. And they're not stopping there. The big idea is to send in 500,000 underwater drones, powered by clean energy, to automate the entire process. These drones would drill holes, pump water, and refreeze the ice without human intervention. But not everyone is convinced. Some scientists think this whole idea is a disaster waiting to happen. First, they point out that saltier ice, the one from seawater pumped onto it, melts faster in the summer. So if this new ice melts too quickly, we could end up making the situation worse. Some of them also think this is a dangerous distraction from the core problem, like treating the symptoms instead of the root causes. Besides, making a small patch of ice thicker is one thing, but doing this across the entire Arctic? That's another challenge entirely. Another thing they're worried about is the ecosystem. The Arctic is one of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. Changing ice thickness could affect marine life, disrupt algae growth, and impact the food chain in ways we don't fully understand. There's also the question of money. Real Ice estimates that refreezing the entire Arctic will cost about $5 to $6 billion per year. Who's paying for this? Right now, they're self-funded with some investors backing them. But eventually, they hope that countries, global funds, and even corporations will finance the project. Real Ice argues that doing nothing could be far worse. If we don't act, we could lose the Arctic within our lifetime. That could at least help to buy more time to fix the planet. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Now, the idea of saving the Arctic ice isn't new. Over the years, scientists have suggested some pretty wild plans to stop the melting. In 2017, there was the initial wind-powered pump plan. Physicist Stephen Desch proposed installing about 10 million wind-powered pumps in the Arctic. These pumps would pull seawater up onto the ice, kind of like real ice. It would freeze in the cold winter months, creating a thicker ice layer. The biggest problem is that someone would have to run this entire show. And what happens if something goes wrong? In 2018, there was the Glass Beads Plan, which was supposed to start in 2020s. A team called the Arctic Ice Project suggested covering the Arctic with tiny reflective glass beads. Yep, glass balls. The idea was basically to replace the ice's mirror effect. The beads would bounce sunlight away, keeping the ice colder for longer. The plan is being tested by a group of scientists working with the Arctic Ice Project. They say the glass balls are made of a material that's safe for animals. They even claim birds use similar materials to help them digest food. The glass used in these microspheres is the same material used in lab equipment and light bulbs. Sounds safe, right? Well, not so fast. There's also the environmental risk. These glass balls are tiny, and they could easily get into the ocean, impacting everything from fish to plankton. We still need more research to understand how this material breaks down in the ocean and whether it could affect marine life. But where things get really crazy is when we start talking about scaling this up. To cover just a tiny fraction of the Arctic, they would need millions of tons of these tiny microspheres, and that's just for starters. And they'd have to be working 24/7 through freezing temperatures and snowstorms. The scientists believe this could help keep the ice thick enough to survive summer and even slow the melting. But can it really work? Then, there's also the Bright Ice Initiative, founded by the same folks behind the Arctic Ice Project. Instead of focusing on the Arctic Ocean, they want to use the same glass microspheres to restore glaciers. They've even tried this out on a glacier in Iceland, but experts are still skeptical. They say it could just speed up melting instead of reversing it. Now, another idea was cloud seeding with water particles. This would involve spraying ocean water into the sky itself. This would form clouds, and they'd reflect more sunlight. So, as you can see, some of these plans were too expensive, too complicated, or just straight up wild. The real ICES plan borrows ideas from earlier projects, but is much cheaper and more practical. Most importantly, it's working. But all this Arctic disaster is already affecting people. In the village of Newtok, Alaska, the land is disappearing. Each year, about 70 feet of the riverbank erodes, taking homes and history with it. That's all because of the erosion and the thawing permafrost. Now, these people had to move to a safer place called Murtavik, just 9 miles away. But it's a long and challenging journey. The relocation is taking years of planning, with Newtok residents already starting the shift in 2019. The new village offers better health and safety, but it's still a work in progress. Things like the school and grocery store remain in the old village, which makes things harder. Water and sewage systems are being set up, and for now, most residents are using a honey bucket system. But at least they have a chance to rebuild. It's still unclear whether these geoengineering ideas are a lifeline or a disaster. For now, we can just keep an eye on them. Welcome to one of the most iconic buildings in New York City. Its official name is the Fuller Building, but thanks to the sharp 25-degree top corner, people began to associate the tower with a flat iron. And today, the name Flatiron is stuck both to the skyscraper and the entire district around it. This unusual cake-slice shape has turned the building into a famous tourist destination. It has popped out in many movies, TV programs, and magazines. So you probably recognize this property, even if you've never been to Manhattan. Surprisingly, today the 285-foot-tall Flatiron is almost empty. And these fancy walls hide a pretty mysterious dispute between their owners. But first things first. In 1901, construction enterprise Fuller Company purchased a sharp triangular plot of land on the crossroad between Broadway and Fifth Avenue. They hired an architect from Chicago, Daniel Burnham, to design the company's new headquarters. The task was to maximize every inch of available space. So Burnham produced a project of a 22-story triangular tower made of steel. The Flatiron building resembled the shape of a Greek column, which means that its top and bottom are slightly wider than the middle. Fuller Company approved the design and demolished several old buildings to clear the space for the future tower. Construction progressed rapidly, and it was completed within a year. Yes, they used to be able to do that. The Flatiron became one of the earliest buildings to have steel for its structural frame instead of load-bearing masonry. Also, it became one of New York's first skyscrapers and the first steel skeleton structure visible to the public. The curtain wall cladding was also then innovative. The builders used terracotta and limestone to wrap a chic finish look around the steel structure that carried the building's weight. At that time, many people believed that this unusual architecture would fail to withstand high winds. The project's engineers analyzed the tower's aerodynamics and created a steel frame to fight likely problems with the wind. But people still reported experiencing heavy gusts on the street around the building. The Flatiron Building had a bunch of other issues. As you may imagine, furnishing this tight space was quite a challenge. Also, the tower didn't originally have any bathrooms for females. That's why lady tenants were at a disadvantage at first. But then the management added ladies' rooms and placed them on odd-number floors. Meanwhile, bathrooms for males were placed on even-numbered floors. Also, the first elevators in the building operated on a water hydraulic system, so it took over 10 minutes to get to the top. Now you can see why that system didn't catch on. It's not surprising that the media expressed skepticism over the new building. Some even called it Burnham's Folly. But despite the naysayers over the years, the tower has been home to many companies and retail tenants. Also, the Flatiron attracted crowds of people. Gradually, it became a frequent sight in paintings and postcards, and turned into one of the most popular symbols of New York City itself. In 1929, during the Great Depression, the tower was sold at an auction for only $100,000. And in 1966, it got the status of an official city landmark. It means that any renovation or demolition works are impossible without the official permission of the authorities. Furthermore, in 1989, the Flatiron received the fancy status of a National Historic Landmark. The last tenants left the building in 2019, and it is sat empty ever since due to renovation works, which have triggered many disputes among the building's current owners and future tenants. Most of the owners wanted to turn the building into a hotel. Meanwhile, Nathan Silverstein, who owned a 25% stake in the property, wanted to divide it up. Finally, in 2023, the local court organized an auction on the building. The owners, who held 75%, intended to buy out Silverstein's stake to put an end to all disputes over the future of this building. The bid started from $50 million and the price soared to $190 million thanks to an unexpected bidder, Jacob Garlick. Surprisingly, he beat out everyone and won the auction. Some considered the price that he offered too high because the building required at least $100 million worth of renovation. Hey, it gets better. Garlick disappeared after the auction. He has never paid anything, not even the deposit, and he hasn't yet explained himself to the media. So for now, Garlick's location and intention remains unknown. Little did we know that it's possible to show up at a luxurious auction in New York, outbid everyone, and then just vanish into space. Well, according to some experts from the real estate world, it's a very weird situation for a building auction. Usually the bidders are asked to prove their funds in advance. Some people suspect that Silverstein asked Garlick to attend the auction on purpose so that he could boost the price and earn more money. But Silverstein claimed that his relationship with Garlick had been distant. On May 20th, the second auction took place. Garlick was absent, but a coalition of syndicates and previous owners won the bid and acquired the Flatiron for $101 million. They haven't yet announced any plans, so today the future of the Flatiron remains uncertain. The age of the Flatiron Building is only around 121 years, but this famous and beloved symbol of New York has survived so many chapters, from challenging traditional architecture to surviving multiple crises, including the Great Depression. So, chances are that this iconic tower will surprise us in the future. Oh, by the way, the Flatiron is not the only skyscraper with issues in New York City. Here's the famous half-built Leaning Tower of Manhattan. A 670-foot skyscraper is located at the corner of South Street and Maiden Lane on the East River. The tower was to host 80 super fancy condos to sell for up to $7 million each. The developer also planned to offer yacht services to the tenants. A pre-sale of this luxurious but unfinished project was launched in 2018. But in 2020, the tower began to lean 3 inches to the north. The developer put construction on hold and initiated a huge investigation to figure out why this tower refused to stay straight. Although the reason remains unclear, the consensus appears to be that a weak foundation is to blame. You think? And now, welcome to the Waldorf Astoria, a former host to authorities, royal families, and Hollywood stars, and maybe not so welcome. This Art Deco masterpiece is the very place where Marilyn Monroe once stayed and where Grace Kelly got engaged to Monaco's Prince Rainier III. But in 2017, the famous hotel was closed for a multi-billion-dollar renovation. The property's new Chinese owners, Anbang Insurance, plan to partially turn the hotel rooms into condo apartments by 2019. The condo price was planned to reach up to $18 million per unit. But eventually, something went wrong, and the date of the project completion was postponed until 2025 at best. Although, according to the media, the renovation might have already cost around $2 billion. Some insiders mention poor coordination within the project caused by the dismissal of its American director. They also blame the property's new owner, Dajia Insurance Group, which took over the project after the chairman of Anbang was sent to prison for fraud in 2018. To date, the future of the Waldorf Astoria remains unclear. So I'd try another hotel if you're visiting the Big Apple. And here's another heartbreak hotel story. In 2019, a development firm, Chetrit Group, launched the construction of a 33-story hotel near Madison Square Garden and Penn Station. The project was supposed to open in 2021 and join the management portfolio of IHG Hotels and Resorts, which runs multiple hotels. However, the developer failed to either repay its loan or complete the construction on time. Meanwhile, the hotel remains unfinished, and the estimated investment for its completion totals around $106 million. Hey, you want to finish the job? Wow, every morning 8.5 million people wake up in New York City. But the Big Apple doesn't belong only to humans. This is the city of ants. There are 17 billion of them here. They live in houses, hide in the grass, crawl under asphalt, and climb trees. For every New Yorker, there's a sneaker box filled with ants. City ants are more fortunate than their forest cousins. They don't have any need to look for food. Millions of people leave behind tons of hot dog crumbs, pizza slices, and coffee drips. Insects just have to wait for a lunch break in an office building. Then they gather around benches in the park or cafe tables. A lot of food is waiting for them there. Over 1 billion. That's how many ants are running through the streets and parks of Manhattan. And in this ocean of insects, scientists have been able to spot tiny reddish-brown creatures. These insects don't fit into any of the 13,000 ant species known to science. They're unique and only live in Manhattan. Their kingdom is between 63rd and 76th Streets. Scientists don't know how long the Manhattans have evolved in isolation. They arrived in the U.S. on ships from Europe and were cut off from the rest of the city's infrastructure. But why go anywhere else if there's enough food? The Manhattan loves fast food, especially corn syrup. Because of such a diet, the insect's body has an increased carbon content. This isn't a problem for the ant, though. Carbon helps it adapt to the dry, warm weather of the concrete jungle. Around 20% of New York City is parks and green spaces. White-footed mice live in these places. Scientists have found out that the mice that live in New York have evolved. They're different from their village relatives. These changes are genetical. It's caused by the diet of white-footed rodents that feed on human food waste. For example, New York mice need enlarged livers to process fatty acids from fast food. Central Park in New York is almost twice the size of the Principality of Monaco. A unique centipede is only found in this green area. The creature, called Hoffman's dwarf centipede, doesn't grow any longer than 0.4 inches. It lives in heaps of dry plants and runs on 41 pairs of legs. This crustacean, measuring only a bit more than 0.3 inches, is called the Socorro isopod. It's one of the rarest animals on the planet. The creature can only be found in a small thermal spring near Socorro, New Mexico. The isopod lives in the water as warm as 90 degrees Fahrenheit and covered with a layer of algae. These are ideal conditions for the creature. To get to Mobile Cave, you'd have to rappel 65 feet down. That's the height of a 4-story building. After that, you'd crawl through narrow passages and swim along a canal with cold water. Sunlight can't get into the cave. The air is poisoned by vapors of ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. This extreme place has been isolated from the outside world for 5.5 million years. A unique ecosystem has formed in this toxic atmosphere. Of all the animals that live there, 33 species of millipedes, scorpions, spiders, and leeches can't be found anywhere else on Earth. These creatures are mostly blind and colorless. Well, why would you need eyes in disguise if you live in complete darkness? Mobile's coolest guy is the venomous centipede. Scientists have nicknamed this animal the king of the cave. It doesn't grow more than 2 inches, but for this world, it's a giant. The blind salamander would feel great in the company of strange animals from Mobile, but these little monsters are separated by the ocean and thousands of miles. The Mobile Cave is located in Romania, where these beauties live only in Texas. Their home is an underground body of water in the San Marcos area. These salamanders grow to be 5 inches long. The name makes it pretty clear that the animal is blind. It does have eyes, but they're pretty much useless. This doesn't stop the salamander from being a skilled snail and shrimp hunter. It senses other animals by feeling the underwater waves they create while moving. The Scottish wildcat lives in the north of Scotland. This animal is different from domestic cats, which love sleeping on the couch. Unlike them, it's a perfect hunter. The creature is 25% larger than the average cat. It's muscular and long-legged. The wildcat's tail is blunt and fluffy, covered in black rings with a black tip on the end. The quokka is called the world's happiest animal. Just look at its smile. This fluffy animal seems to always be ready for a photo shoot. Quokkas are only found in Australia. Around 10,000 animals live on Rottnest Island and several other locations. The creature's cute smile is an evolutionary trait. An open mouth helps it breathe and regulates its body temperature. Oh, by the way, if you try to feed a quokka, you'll have to pay a fine of more than $200. This baby will feel comfortable even if you put it on your little finger. The animal lives only on the island of Madagascar. Scientists have found just 2 tiny reptiles, a male and a female. The researchers have named the nano-chameleon Brocchisia nana. It's a mystery to them why it doesn't grow larger than a sunflower seed. The next animal on the list also lives only in Madagascar. Locals call this creature Ai. The unusual lemur spends most of its life in trees and leads a nocturnal lifestyle. This might explain why it looks so tired. Even though the Ai is a lemur, its teeth are like those of a rodent. Its claws resemble sloth's claws, and its body looks like that of a monkey. The animal's fingers and toes are especially frightening. They're long and thin, with pointy claws. Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. This is a giraffe with its trademark long neck. A zebra is grazing nearby. Black and white stripes on its body help the animal reflect sunlight during the day and keep it warm at night. But what if you combine these animals? No need, nature has done this work for you. The okapi looks like a giraffe with a short neck, horse body, and zebra stripes on its legs. The okapi has a long tongue. Males have small giraffe horns on their heads. You can only meet these unusual animals in the African rainforest. If you decide to travel around Africa afterward, you must visit the Ethiopian highlands. That's where you see unique gelada monkeys. And no, they're not named after the Italian ice cream. That's gelato. Don't mix that up. Males look like rock stars from the 70s. They're bright and have cool hair. But don't mess with these animals. They aren't too friendly. Geladas spend most of their time on the ground, and the main part of their diet is the grass they collect during the day. Scientists believe that geladas are the remaining members of an ancient gang of critters. It lived millions of years ago in vast spaces from South Africa to India. Now, imagine people the size of the Statue of Liberty living next to us. Sounds like science fiction. But for the animal world, this is reality. The world's smallest tortoise species, the speckled tortoise, doesn't grow more than 4 inches long. But the Galapagos Islands are home to giant tortoises that reach the length of 5 feet. They also weigh like a sports bike. The largest of them had an incredible weight of 1,000 pounds. The giant Galapagos tortoise lives for 100 years and sleeps 16 hours a day. Due to its slow metabolism, the animal may not eat or drink water for a whole year. Millions of years ago, lizards from South America climbed onto a log. Sea waves carried the log to the Pacific Ocean. The lizards traveled hundreds of miles and ended up on the Galapagos Islands. They had to evolve to adapt to new conditions. Scientists believe this is how the marine iguanas appeared. These unique animals look like dangerous dragons, but in fact, they feed on plants and are totally harmless. Iguanas spend most of their lives in water. To get rid of sea salt that accumulates in the body, these animals literally sneeze salt. Achoo! The lyrebird lives only in southeastern Australia and the island of Tasmania. The bird has such a strange name because of its tail. It looks like a lyre, a stringed instrument of the ancient Greeks. Lyrebirds are known for their ability to imitate other birds, and not only them. The bird copies animal screams, human voices, chainsaw noises, car and fire alarms, and even the click of a camera. About 12,000 years ago, a salt lake appeared on one of Palau's islands. Today, it's called Jellyfish Lake. This 1,500 by 500-foot reservoir is home to 5 million golden jellyfish. These unique creatures swim to the west shore of the lake every morning. There, jellyfish wait for the sunrise. Then, all day long, they follow the sun. Algae lives in the tissues of the jellyfish, feeding them with energy. These algae can't live without sunlight. Well, looky here. It's New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. Hong Kong on the Hudson, the greatest city in the world. New York, New York, the city so nice they named it twice. Alright, I'll stop. You thought you knew this city so well, but underneath all that glitz and glamour is a facade, literally. New York is populated with some of the most iconic urban buildings in the world and home to some of the most unique and famous towers. Who would have known that New York was a front for fake buildings? And the cool thing is that there are plenty to search for. Okay, I'm adding that to my bucket list. So the question is, why do they put these fake buildings all over New York? The city is one of the most vibrant places in the world and requires many infrastructures to keep the city in motion. That means having many industrial structures and buildings in every major district. New York is charming for the design and the buildings. Imagine having industrial structures right next to your favorite pizza parlor or hot dog stand. The designers thought ahead and decided to disguise those industrial infrastructures as fake buildings. They blend with the city so well that they don't stand out. They look like your good old apartment or housing unit with a front door, real-life windows, and even charming balconies where people would hang out. The only thing is that there's nothing behind the facade and no one is allowed inside. So, where in the world can you find these fake buildings? For starters, one of the most popular fake buildings is in Brooklyn. At 58 Joralemon Street, you can find a very typical neighborhood. But between the buildings stands a brick building with a slightly deeper shade than the rest. It has bright open windows that blend in with the rest of the buildings in the neighborhood, except that they're blacked out. At first glance, you might not think of it as anything, but if you pay close attention, the building looks like a glitch from a video game. It was built in 1847, way before New York was considered glamorous. Originally, it was meant to be a regular building, but in 1908, they converted it into a fake building. Don't think you can just try to break in. Even if you could, it's pointless, because it's part of a ventilation fan for the subway. It also serves as an emergency exit for some of the surrounding buildings. Actually, throughout New York, many fake buildings exist to disguise the subway vents for the smoke to escape. All the way to 415 Bruckner Boulevard, the Bronx, This townhouse was designed by the Switzer Group, which is an interior architect company. It's not as charming as the one at 58 Joralemon Street, but it serves a similar purpose: to hide an electric substation for New York's utility company. The city needs these substations to reduce the high-voltage electricity to a lower voltage so it can be distributed locally. Having a building like this popping out of the middle of your neighborhood isn't exactly the smartest way to attract people to the Bronx. That's why the fake townhouse facade is the perfect camouflage. Now, some of these fake buildings don't really hit the mark and stick out like a sore thumb. The people of Manhattan describe the Mulberry Square infrastructure as a complete clunker. After plenty of redesigns and back to the drawing board meetings, the result is still not pretty. The locals compare it to a concrete box. They created windows without glass, which doesn't allow the building to blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. But it beats a typical subway ventilation plant either way. There are just so many places to visit and cross off your bucket list. But if you live in China, you can literally stay in the country and visit many iconic cities around the world. The replica cities began when the Chinese economy started booming in the early 90s. They wanted the lifestyle of the rich and famous without wanting to leave their country. They can be comfortable eating their local food and get the feeling of being abroad. The Chinese province of Guangdong has an identical copy of the historical Australian alpine village Hallstatt. The real Hallstatt is centuries old and one of the most charming places to discover. The local people of Hallstatt also had no idea that their home was being built in China. Some people thought that this was controversial, probably because it cost around $940 million to build it. Paris is undoubtedly one of the most charming cities you could ever visit. Its rich history and vibrant culture are enough to catch the first plane to go there. For residents of Tianducheng, that's something they can do anytime they want. The city is also known as Sky City and has a replica of the Eiffel Tower that looks eerily like the iconic one in Paris and built buildings to match the city's visual charm. One of the main things that will break the charm is the farmland surrounding the city. There's barely anyone there, and the streets are always empty, very un-Paris-like. Still, you can find some nice fountains and statues scattered along the streets to give it some spirit. There's laundry hung everywhere, even on the trees. The picturesque fountains are dry and many apartments are empty. Only a few stores are open for business. Even though this looks like a fake city, it's quite real. Some people live here because it's more affordable than other places. 2 hours away from this town is another version of Paris's Pont Alexandre III and a carbon copy of London's Tower Bridge, but with 4 towers instead of 2. Hey, such a bargain! You can also visit the closest thing to Italy, but this time you can go shopping. Florentia Village is an outlet mall that offers an array of shops to lose yourself. The good thing is that this was built by an Italian developer to capture the essence of an Italian village. It has fountains, canals, and mosaics for proper aesthetics. It began in 2011 and has more than 200 shops with many Italian brands and British, US, and Chinese brands as well. The place is so popular that it gets between 10,000 and 25,000 visitors per day. China also has other replica towns that put you in a mini Manhattan called the Yujiapu Financial District. The developer's goal was to make this place the financial center of the world. It was complete with the right landmarks, like the Rockefeller and Lincoln Centers, but the project was halted in 2019, leaving it mainly empty. You can find a typical English town with cobbled streets, Victorian homes, and restaurants that make Thames Town. This place was meant to recreate a European lifestyle fantasy without leaving Shanghai. China also has a Dutch town that has some elements of Amsterdam with windmills and famous canals. They even decided to copy some of the landmarks, like the Netherlands Maritime Museum. Here's a bonus story of Lebanon's thinnest building built out of a dispute. It's the story of 2 brothers who both inherited unequal plots of land. One of the brothers happened to get a very thin plot of land and couldn't help but be jealous of his brother's nice plot of land. He wasn't pleased. Both of the lands overlook the Mediterranean Sea in a lively neighborhood of Beirut. So it's no wonder that both brothers couldn't agree on how they should develop their lands. It was obvious that the brother with the most land could build a proper building. The other brother had to improvise. He decided to obstruct his brother's property by constructing a thin building enough to only fit 14 feet at its widest and 2 feet at its most narrow. It was constructed in 1954, and the locals of the area know it as the Grudge. The crazy thing is that the place was once habitable with many visitors enjoying their stay. It's not easy to live there, but it's part of living the experience. The building is still standing, but is empty. It's one of the most important national monuments of the United States, with over 500,000 visitors each year. The Washington Monument was constructed to commemorate George Washington, the first American president. But if you've ever looked at it closely, in person, or by Googling its pictures, you've surely noticed it has two different colors. Well, it's not a design choice, if that's what you're wondering. The Washington National Monument Society, the authority in charge of the construction, ran out of funding, and the project was put on hold in the 1850s. It took another 25 years for the authorities to resume the construction. They finished the upper two-thirds of the monument in 1884. Since they evidently used marble from a different location, given the time that had passed, it was difficult to envision how these materials would behave in the future. These two sections looked very much alike at first, but with time, mostly due to winds, rain, and erosion, they ended up having different hues. There's even a third portion of marble, which is noticeable only if you pay very close attention. The constructors initially went for a marble provider in Massachusetts, but quickly realized the colors didn't match. They had to switch to another supplier, but their mistake resulted in this third shade of marble. It's only noticeable up front, so people mostly think that the monument has two colors. The builders figured out the difference quite fast and found a type of marble that resembled the initial one. But the new material eventually turned to a different color too, mostly due to weather conditions. Are you one of those people who like to spend their free time on Pinterest or Instagram in search of your next travel location? Then you surely haven't missed a little Italian town called Cinque Terre. The reason why it's so popular among photographers and globetrotters is its brightly painted buildings, which come in a nice contrast to the crystal clear ocean waters. These houses come in a huge selection of colors, from green to yellow and even bright pink. So it's no wonder this location is such a hit. It looks more like a painting than an actual place on Earth. But why are these houses so gorgeously bright? Local legends say that fishers used to paint their homes in various colors so that they could quickly spot them from the water as they came back home from the sea. Now, some other buildings come with coloring so specific that their inhabitants are prohibited from changing it by law. It's the case of the Pink City, otherwise known as Jaipur in India. It has numerous buildings of different hues of pink, from dusty rose to fuchsias. This impressive coloring dates back to the 1800s. Rumor has it that the Indian Maharaja of the time, Sawai Ram Singh, wanted to welcome Prince Albert during his visit. So he literally painted the whole town pink, which of course begs the question, why he chose pink and not any other color? And it turns out this hue was meant to subtly imply the idea of a welcoming location or a place of hospitality. Jaipur isn't the only monochrome city in the world. Its blue counterpart is located in Morocco. It's called Chefchaouen. Some locals say that the city is painted blue to symbolize the beautiful coloring of the Mediterranean Sea. Others consider that painting their houses blue keeps them cooler when it's hot. There are even claims that painting a house blue can help keep mosquitoes away. People believe that the hue resembles the waves of the sea, which isn't a really desirable location for insects, if you think about it. Now, this construction has become the undeniable symbol of the City of Love. The Tour Eiffel, I can smell a freshly baked baguette, can't you? Well, it turns out the Eiffel Tower has a little chromatic secret of its own. This famous French monument is painted chestnut brown these days, but it hasn't always been this color. The engineer who built the tower and also gave it its name was a man called Gustave Eiffel. He claimed that the initial paint used for the tower, a very bright red, was supposed to help protect the construction from rust, kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge does in San Francisco. But since it was built, the Eiffel Tower has had many different hues, like ochre, yellow, and several shades of brown. At one point, they even used the ombre paint effect. It made the tower look as if it was fading upon reaching the sky. I've hardly ever heard a more touching story than that of the Taiwanese Rainbow Grandpa. His name is Huang Yongfu, and his story begins in the late 2000s. Given he was officially the last resident, the local authorities were just about to bring down his small village in order to make room for a modern apartment complex. To cope with his sadness, the man started painting the walls of the houses in his village. He began with drawings of birds, cats, and eventually people. In 2010, a local university student found out about this little DIY project, and the rest was history. With the help of a fundraising campaign, this little village now attracts a staggering number of tourists each year, over 1 million. It's no wonder the local authorities eventually renounced their plans. While we're on the subject of beautiful designs, there's a library out there that actually looks like a giant bookshelf. No, it's not a scene from a fantasy movie. Somebody actually built that. One of the facades of the Kansas City Public Library looks like an ordinary row of books lined up on a shelf. Well, not really ordinary, since the books are 25 feet tall and 9 feet wide each. You don't need to be a book nerd to want to check this one out soon. The world's largest basket isn't meant for overweight cats. It's actually a building. Yup, there's a building out there that is actually shaped like a basket. You can find it in Newark, Ohio. It was initially built to serve as headquarters for the Longaberger Company, an American producer of handcrafted wood baskets. It's also renowned among professionals as one of the best-known examples of mimetic architecture. That's a type of design where buildings are constructed to mimic their function or purpose. The building covers 180,000 square feet. It cost around $30 million to build and was completed in 1997. With 7 floors and a central atrium, it also has a glass ceiling which lets natural light get inside. This immense basket is also topped with 2 steel handles. They're equipped with heating elements that prevent them from freezing. They also protect the glass atrium situated right below from any ice that might fall on it during the winter season. Darmstadt, Germany, there's a residential building complex built in the 1990s, named the Weissspirale. It has a wonderful design, as well as an interesting story to back it up. The name literally translates to forest spiral. This might refer to the plan of the building, along with the fact that its roof is green. Not simply in color, though. This swirly building has a jaw-dropping forest on its roof, with maple and lime trees. The unique construction was completed in 2000. It has 105 apartments and more than 100 windows, each of them with its particular shape and size. With 12 floors at its highest point, the building also houses a cafe and a bar. Another interesting feature? Each corner in the construction is rounded off. Now, should you ever find yourself visiting the city of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, try not to miss the cube houses. These unique buildings are placed above ground level on top of a pedestrian bridge close to the city center and the Rotterdam Black metro station. In the 20th century, the city of Rotterdam was damaged. That's why later it became the focus of new, cutting-edge architecture designs. Dutch architect Piet Blom started designing functional housing, which could also leave some room for pedestrians on the ground level. He got the idea for these houses from simple elements, such as forests and trees. Each house is placed on a hexagonal pylon, a construction made of concrete and designed to look like the trunk of a tree. Each of these pylons has a staircase that leads to well-spaced living areas. Another example of a house that looks like it has just escaped from a fairy tale is the Nautilus House. You can find it near Mexico City, Mexico. With its shell-like shape, it's also one of the first representations of bioarchitecture. The man behind this unique design is Javier Senosieng. He was inspired by the works of Gaudi and Frank Lloyd Wright. The very concept of bioarchitecture is that buildings should be constructed based on structures found in nature. It's also supposed to remind people of their local history and traditions. The Nautilus house doesn't have a lot of storage space, according to the builders, but this structure is supposed to be earthquake-resistant and maintenance-free. Not to mention hundreds of tiny rainbow-colored stained glass windows decorating the building. There are many myths around arguably the greatest structure ever built by humans, the Great Wall of China. Some say it's so grand that it's visible from space. Others claim that you can see it from as far as the moon. Other theories suggest that the builders of the wall were left inside. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but all these impressive stories are just myths. But even with those stories busted, the Great Wall of China is an impressive and truly breathtaking structure. So let me tell you its true story. Today, China is one of the most populated countries in the world, counting as many as 1.4 billion residents. It's also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. There is a theory that while the European continent, for example, was most likely reached by humans from Africa, China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. Some people believe that the Chinese civilization got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the prehistoric period. So now, the Great Wall of China. It's truly big even by today's standard, stretching for over 13,000 miles. To imagine it better, it's almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles. Or even a bit greater than the distance between the North and South Poles. Even in modern times, people have never built anything close to this big. Of course, it didn't take a day to build the Great Wall of China. 2? Keep going. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect themselves from invaders. Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BCE and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's border against attacks from the north. A trusted general directed the construction, enrolling a big group of workers, soldiers, commoners, and convicts. Back then, the wall was built of rammed earth and wood. In some places that were strategically important, the sections of the wall overlapped to provide maximum security. The walls were around 26 feet high on average. But the Great Wall didn't yet look like the construction we know today. Every next emperor would pick up the big wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used bricks to build it, others moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added by Ming emperors. The watchtowers made it possible to communicate with other parts of the wall through smoke and fire messages. So, the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. The reasons why some parts of the wall have been standing for centuries and are still in good condition is glutinous rice flour. Turns out, this sticky rice mortar is almost like cement. It's very strong and waterproof, sealing the bricks so tightly together that even sneaky weeds can't grow between them. You may also notice that some bricks have writings carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So, in the case of some problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who should be held accountable for it. Recently, a research group has looked through official historical documents of the Ming Dynasty that ruled China from the 14th to the 17th centuries. They came across records of secret doors in the Great Wall, so they decided to find them. They used a flying robot to capture continuous centimeter resolution photos of the wall. They photographed 90% of the wall that was built during the Ming Dynasty and discovered the remains of over 220 secret doors along the wall. Some of them have a specific width and height that allows only one person to go through. Others are large enough to allow 2 horses to pass at the same time. Why are the doors there? Well, the Great Wall's main goal was to protect the country from the enemy. Building doors that could let the enemy in would undermine the whole point of having a wall. So, of course, the doors were secret passages. They perfectly matched the surroundings topographically, and the exit on the outside was camouflaged with bricks so that it was almost completely indistinguishable from the brick wall. The wall was never just a defensive wall, and it was never completely closed. It could be opened on demand. It was also a structure used for trade and commerce, communication between inside and outside the wall, and of course, for defense and spying. Some doors were used for trade with the other side. Through smaller doors, a person would sneak out to spy on the enemy that lived on the other side. The hidden gates were also useful for a sudden attack. As you remember, some gates were camouflaged with brick on the outside. The exit was so indistinguishable that the enemy had no idea exactly where it was located. The inside entrance for Chinese soldiers was hollow, so they could walk through the wall and break the camouflaged exit gate from the inside, starting their surprise attack. Now, even though the main point was to prevent outsiders from getting into the city, the wall wasn't too effective on that matter. It could still be climbed over or marched around. So the wall was being watched at all times, and the guards gave signals to the troops if they saw the enemy approach. Also, the wall provided more time to mobilize and bulk up the country's forces or lure the enemy troops into a difficult strategic position. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century. The wall lost its strategic and military importance due to technological advances. Over the centuries to today, only 8% of the Great Wall is in good condition, and the rest is damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace, due to both natural erosion and human damage. I guess you could say it's now just a pretty good wall. As you remember, the first parts of the wall were built out of rammed earth and wood. These are not the most unfailing materials if we're talking about thousands of years. Also, destructive farming methods have turned large areas into a desert and contributed to erosion. Also, many bricks were taken away from the wall in the last century to be used in building farms and houses. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 10 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. Since 1987, the wall has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site, highlighting that it has an outstanding importance to humanity. The wall is one of China's 56 World Heritage Sites, second place among countries with landmarks protected by UNESCO. Who's first, you ask? Well, the top spot, with 58 World Heritage Sites, belongs to Italy. And do you know that the wall isn't only a famous tourist attraction, but also the location of the Great Wall Marathon? It's a marathon that was established in 1999 and is one of the most challenging ones in the world. You guessed right, people run along the wall, including all the steps. There are 3 distances, so that participants can run a full marathon that is 26 miles, a half marathon that's 13 miles, or just have a fun run of 5 miles. Shenzhen, China. At first sight, it doesn't look like a perfect place to build one of the fanciest and tallest buildings in the world, but a company from China decided to take a chance. They had visions of building Golden Finance 117, a unique, mighty skyscraper with plenty of things super rich people could enjoy. At that time, no one knew it would turn into one of the tallest ghost scrapers in the world, meaning it would be a skyscraper with no life, events, or people inside. The one that no one would even talk about anymore. The world has impressive tall skyscrapers. The first one was built in 1885 in Chicago. And the tallest one today is in Dubai. Then there's one in Shanghai, another one in Mecca, and Shenzhen. Golden Finance 117 was supposed to be the fifth tallest skyscraper ever built. The construction was started 13 years ago, and at first, it all looked very promising. In 2015, the building reached its full height, 1,955 feet. But then, something mysterious happened. People deserted the skyscraper shortly after it was almost done, and the whole project has remained unfinished to this day. The company got the idea in 2008. During that period, plenty of cities across China were trying to build something impressive to get their place on the world stage. Golden Finance 117 was supposed to be a commercial and residential tower for very rich people. Italian and French-style interior design, a polo club, extensive gardens. The skyscraper was supposed to have a 3-story diamond-shaped atrium at the top, with a swimming pool, sky bar, and a restaurant. And don't forget about the highest observation deck in the world, a paradise for those who could afford it. Imagine living at the top of such a skyscraper. Golden Finance 117 was expected to be habitable up to its highest point. This mixed-use skyscraper was supposed to rise 128 floors above the ground. There was a plan to turn 117 of them into commercial space and hotel, and 11 more floors were expected to be for operational and mechanical services. The building's ratio of height to width was 9.5 to 1. When you have such a high and thin tower, you have to be careful with such forces as strong winds. But the skyscraper was designed to resist all this. No wonder, with a perimeter frame of mega braces, huge tapering columns, and transfer trusses. On the surface, it all looked well. An excellent design and unique construction. But before the company started pre-sales, authorities needed to inspect and sign off on the final product. This is a process all new developers need to go through if they want to get and keep their spot on the property market. The country wants only established and reliable companies to keep the quality levels high. Back in the day, the company that was building the skyscraper was a new player in the Chinese market, so they had to finance their project all by themselves. They couldn't start recouping their investment until each of their buildings was finished. In other words, it was tricky ever since the beginning. But they were focused on the result. If they managed to finish the entire project with no major issues, the reward would be amazing. So they started in August 2008. China survived the global financial crisis that also happened in 2008, but it still affected the market. That brought lots of pressure on the company, which is why they stopped building the skyscraper in January 2010. Things got better in 2011. That's when the company decided to continue their work, finish the tower, and get ready to sell it because the market was growing once again. But considering all the rules on the property market, the company was in a very vulnerable situation. Things were getting more and more complicated. In 2015, there was a new crisis, this time affecting the stock market. The series of unfortunate events kept happening on and off until everyone stopped talking about the entire project. One more issue was the location. The skyscraper was being built on what used to be industrial land, and in the area, there weren't many wealthy people who could afford to live in such a building. The company probably hoped for people to relocate there once they finished the construction, which never happened. China generally has the biggest number of tall buildings in the whole world. There are 1,400 skyscrapers in the country. The US takes second place with more than 800 high-rise buildings. Then there's Japan with over 250 skyscrapers. 2018 was the year when China built more skyscrapers than any other country in the world. 88 new buildings with a height of 656 feet or more appeared there. But because of multiple unforeseen events, Golden Finance 117 never got its chance to shine. Now it's just a ghost place everyone stopped talking about in 2018. Now, this wasn't the only case when a building remained unfinished for a long period of time. A new airport in Berlin, Germany was meant to open in June 2012. It wasn't the first project like this to miss the deadline, but it was one of the most memorable. The airport was about to open, but right before it did, inspectors found around 120,000 defects all over the place. For example, some automatic doors didn't open. There were fire safety issues. Authorities also noticed sagging roofs. About 106,000 miles of cable were wired in the wrong way, which means they couldn't turn on some lights or turn off others. Experts were trying to solve these problems for 9 years. The airport was built to handle 27 million passengers a year. In 2019, over 45 million travelers passed through the 2 other overburdened airports in Berlin. These airports are now set to close and merge with the new one, which has started expanding. The original budget for the whole project was more than $8.2 billion, but it's likely to increase in the next few years. The idea occurred back in 1990, and it took 6 years just to find the right spot to build the airport. The official construction didn't start for another decade. The original code for this airport also needed to be changed since it was already in use by an airport in India. But if you design an airport in the early 2000s, will it even be compatible with the travel habits and technology in 2020 and beyond? Also, there isn't enough space for all the planes that are supposed to be there. And still, since 2020, the airport has been open and growing bigger. Meanwhile, a tower in Krakow, Poland, got the nickname Skeleton. It stood proud and tall, but its unfinished carcass indeed looked like a skeleton. At 300 feet, it's one of the tallest buildings in Krakow. The project started in 1975, but stopped because of some difficulties in the country that occurred at that time. The tower remained abandoned for a long time and changed owners several times. It was often wrapped in advertising billboards. Luckily, it didn't remain unfinished. In 2016, the latest reconstruction process started. The main goal was to turn the skyscraper into a modern office building. It's completed now. The tower consists of 5 office buildings, together with the main one in the center. Architects found inspiration in styles from the 1920s and 30s. There's a terrace at the top. In the future, a museum of the history of the building might appear in the skyscraper. And here's one more ghost tower, this time in Bangkok, Thailand. From the outside, you'd say it's just another part of Bangkok's skyline. The skyscraper is around 75% completed. But once you take a closer look, you'll see there are plenty of interior structures missing. It was supposed to be a luxury building, but right now it's just another abandoned skyscraper. It's surrounded by a fence and doesn't look safe. The walls are covered with graffiti and there's no electricity. The building stands there as a reminder of what it could have become and draws the attention of urban explorers from all over the world. The construction process stopped when the crisis started, and now only occasional adventurists visit the site to enjoy the magnificent view of the city and the river. Hey, New Year is coming and we're going to celebrate. Pack your things, we're going to China. Yeah, you might think I'm crazy. New Year was some time ago. But Lunar New Year isn't on January 1st. It doesn't even have a regular date because it depends on the lunar calendar. But it's usually sometime in January or February. The first day of the year is the day when the new moon appears. Then the celebration lasts for about 15 days until the moon is full. This year, Lunar New Year falls on February 12th. A whopping 1/6 of the world celebrates it, at least. The holiday is celebrated in China, where we're headed, but it's also a public holiday in many other countries. They all have different names for it, but the concept is the same, a lunar calendar celebration. Outside of Asia, the biggest celebration is held in San Francisco. It's been that way since the middle of the 19th century, when many Chinese workers arrived there during the gold rush to work in the mines. Now you can see huge Lunar New Year fireworks in tons of cities around the U.S. But getting to or moving around China isn't that easy. We gotta be careful, because right now, transportation systems are stretched to the limit. About 15 days before the new year, and then 25 days into it, a lot of people travel somewhere by plane, train, bus, or on foot. It's traditional to visit your family for New Year. It's the largest annual human migration on the planet. Last year, in this 40-day period, there were about 3 billion total trips taken. The Lunar New Year is also called Spring Festival. It signifies the end of the winter. And wait, are you as confused as I am right now? Spring in February? It's not a mistake. There are 24 solar terms in the Chinese traditional calendar, and each of them lasts about 15 days. Usually, the new year falls on the term that starts in the beginning of February, and it's called the beginning of spring. It's followed by the seasons rainwater, waking of insects, and spring equinox. The traditional Chinese calendar is a bit different to the one they and the rest of the world uses. Years are counted in 60-year cycles. The cycle that's running now started in 1984. Also, their calendar is way ahead because they started counting years much earlier. This year will be 4719. Also, every year has a different zodiac sign, one of the 12 animals. The cycle of 12 starts with the rat, followed by the ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, sheep, monkey, rooster, dog, and pig. Thank you. 2020 was the year of the rat, and 2021 is the year of the ox. The year of the animal you were born in is your zodiac animal. Your zodiac animal comes around every 12 years, and some say it's unlucky. But don't worry, there's a way to protect yourself. The color red. Some people wear red clothes during the year of their zodiac animal, or more likely, get a red purse or tie a red ribbon to their bag or something. A little more about red. We've finally arrived in Beijing, the capital of China. Notice how everything's decorated in red? City streets are lit up with red lanterns. Some people are dressed in red, and houses are decorated with spring festival decorations. These red decorations are a very important part of this holiday. There's no way to celebrate it without them. Red is also a big deal in Chinese culture. Just look at the flag. In China, the color red means good fortune and joy, and symbolizes good luck for the following year. Sure, some are wearing red, but the thing that really stands out is that a lot of people have new clothes on. People clean their houses before the new year, get new haircuts, and declutter their lives as best they can, all to greet the new year. The most important part of the celebration is the reunion dinner. Wherever family members are, they all try to come back home to celebrate. There's a big feast to commemorate the past year, and there's usually a lot of food. An important dish in traditional dinners is a whole fish, which signifies prosperity for the new year. Another common thing to eat are rice cakes. They're so iconic, some people even call them New Year cakes. They're made of rice flour and are very sticky. There are also dumplings, chopped meat and vegetables wrapped in dough. They're made to imitate the shape of ancient Chinese silver ingots that were used as money. So dumplings signify wealth. The rule of the evening: get stuffed full of delicious dumplings. You'll need energy. There's a long public holiday ahead, the longest one all year. Most people have 7 to 12 days of vacation, and students sometimes don't go to school for the whole month. After the main meal, some families sit together and watch the Lunar New Year Gala. It's a TV program with many different performances. There's everything: music, dancing, comedy, and drama. The gala holds the Guinness World Record for being the world's most watched TV program. Well, no wonder. China's population is more than 1.4 billion people. Younger family members get red envelopes with money from their grandparents, uncles, and other family members. Bosses give them to employees, and students might even give them to their favorite teachers. Nowadays, many of them are digital. Fireworks were accidentally invented in China more than 2,000 years ago, when someone unintentionally tossed bamboo into a fire. 1,000 years later, they were reinvented by an alchemist who was trying to find the formula for eternal life. He mixed sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate and heated it up. Kaboom! Packed into a piece of bamboo, it made the first firecrackers. They were traditionally used to scare away evil spirits. More than 1,000 years later, China is still the world's leading producer of fireworks. If you love fireworks and the 4th of July just isn't enough, see if there are any big cities near you having Lunar New Year fireworks. They can be epic. According to tradition, the first day of the year is for all-out celebration. That's another reason why it's better to clean your house before the new year. Also, everyone has a birthday. It doesn't really matter when you were actually born. In China, people have a regular age and a nominal age. The real age is just the regular one, starting at 0. But the nominal age is a bit different. When a person is born, he or she is considered to be 1 year old. Every New Year's Day, people become 1 year older. For example, those born on February 11th this year would just have to wait a few days to get a nominal age of 2. Rice is a big part of Chinese culture, but not on the 3rd day of the new year. That's Rice's birthday. On that day, people that are following the tradition aren't supposed to eat any rice. People usually eat a type of pasta or dumplings instead. There's another important event a few days later. The 10th day of the Lunar New Year is called the Stone Festival. On that day, people don't use stone tools. That was a big deal back in the day when stone tools were used every day to make flour. The last, 15th day of the celebration is called the Lantern Festival. Historians say that the first lanterns were used about 2,000 years ago. Now they're a big part of China's celebration culture. On the last day of the New Year celebration, people go outside at night with their lanterns. The lantern symbolizes letting go of your old self to become a better person in the new year. Also, many write riddles on their lanterns and solve the riddles of others when they go outside. A big part of the public celebration is the Dragon Dance. It's performed by a large team of dancers who hide inside a long model of a dragon. Plus, there's a whole team of drummers nearby providing the music. The dragon moves around, sometimes in a circle and sometimes like a wave. That means that the dancers have to remember the entire choreography without being able to see what's going on around them. And if the folks in the tail are moving too slowly, you shout back to them to quit dragging. Well, I thought it was fun. On December the 5th, 1952, a nauseating yellow-gray fog engulfed London, claiming 12,000 lives. This wasn't mere mist, it stank of rotting eggs and stretched 30 miles wide. Buses halted, planes were grounded, and ambulances were trapped. For 5 days, the city vanished in the stench and sludge. Streets slipped with a black ooze. Those who dared ventured out stumbled blindly, smudging their faces while birds crashed into buildings. With visibility 0, thieves ran rampant, and even indoor shows were canceled. The Great Smoke sent over 100,000 people to hospitals, leaving a grim legacy of demise and decay. The causes of this tragedy started long into the past. Something called pea soup fog became one of the symbols of London in the 19th century. Nature wasn't to blame for this fog. It was caused by people burning coal to heat their homes and run factories. In fact, London's air started getting smoky all the way back in the 13th century, when people began widely using coal. It got worse as the city grew bigger. By the 17th century, people were already complaining about the dirty air. King James I tried to prevent so much coal burning with new laws, but nothing really changed. As more factories popped up during the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th century, the problem blew out of proportion. The air was full of tiny particles that water clung to and formed dark, heavy clouds. This mix of smoke and fog became so bad, people called it smog. Yep, this word was invented in London in the early 20th century. The smog got so thick sometimes it could last for a whole week, and it made people ill. Some even passed away because of it. Even though the smog was harmful, people didn't want to stop using coal because it gave them jobs and kept their homes warm. So the problem lingered. By the 20th century, thick fogs were happening less frequently, finally, because factories started moving away from the city. But on that December day in 1952, an anticyclone appeared over London. This meant that the cold air near the ground got trapped under warmer air higher up, like a lid keeping everything underneath. Because of this, all the smoke from factories, cars, and home fireplaces couldn't float up and away like usual. Instead, it clung near the ground, mixed with water in the air, and produced an extremely thick, dirty fog. Plus, daylight in December is shorter, and it was really cold, so people had to use even more coal for heating and lighting than they normally did. All this led to a disaster. It was clear that sulfur particles from the burning coal made the fog yellow and smell like rotten eggs. but scientists couldn't figure out why and how these particles turned into sulfuric acid. Decades later, an international team of researchers recreated that scary fog in a lab. They used samples of air and atmospheric measurements from the fog in two large Chinese cities that have high levels of sulfur dioxide in the air, just like London during the Great Smoke. They learned that the thick, dirty air, called haze, doesn't form in the same way in London and in China. In London's fog, smoke from burning coal released two gases, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide. These gases mixed with water droplets in the fog, which made it harmless at first because the water diluted the harmful chemicals. But as the water evaporated and there was nothing to dilute the two dioxides, the fog became very acidic and hazardous to breathe, so it damaged people's lungs. In present-day China, things are a little different. A third chemical, ammonia, joins the mix. Now ammonia, which comes from farms and cars, helps balance out the acidity of the fog, so it's less harmful than London's deadly fog. But the scientists found that cutting down on nitrogen dioxide and ammonia could still help China reduce its air quality problems. They hope that their discovery will help both understand London's past fogs and give China ideas for making its air cleaner. It could also save the health of millions of people around the world who are now living in cities with bad air quality. After the terrible fog of 1952, everyone realized how serious London's air problem was. 4 years later, the British authorities created a law called the Clean Air Act to stop something like that from happening again. This law banned people from burning smoky fuels like coal in their homes or in factory furnaces in some parts of the city. To help people adjust, the authorities gave them money so that they could switch to cleaner heating options like oil, natural gas, or electricity. It took time for these changes to make a big difference, and sadly, another dangerous smog happened in 1962. But the Clean Air Act was a very important first step for protecting the environment and people's health. Almost a century before the Great Smoke, another smelly event happened to London, the Great Stink. Back then, people didn't have proper bathrooms or sewers, and all the waste from houses and factories went straight into the River Thames. When the weather got super hot in July and August, the water level in the river went down, and piles of waste, sometimes 6 feet, popped up on the muddy banks. The smell was so terrible that even Queen Victoria and Prince Albert had to cancel their relaxing boat ride on the river. The politicians working in the brand new Parliament buildings, which were right by the river, couldn't handle the smell either. The air inside was so terrible that they had to hold handkerchiefs over their noses to breathe. They even tried soaking the curtains in chloride of lime, hoping it would cover up the horrible odor. Many Londoners believe that the bad air, called miasma, caused horrible things like cholera, which had already taken the lives of lots of people. Engineer Joseph Bazalgette solved the problem as he built a new sewer system that would move all the waste away from the city. His sewer system was so well designed that it still works today, even though London has grown to over 8 million people. On the other side of the Atlantic, in the United States, there was also a day when you couldn't see your hand before your face, and it was impossible to breathe outside. But the reasons for this Black Sunday were very different from the Great Smoke of London. In 1931, it almost completely stopped raining in the southern Great Plains. This drought lasted for nearly 10 years. Without rain, the farms dried up and the soil turned to dust. Strong winds blew this dry dirt into the air and created huge dust storms. These storms, called black blizzards, made it hard to breathe and see anything. People tried to protect themselves by putting Vaseline in their noses, wearing masks, and sealing their homes, but the dust still made many of them sick. In 1934, things got even worse. It was the driest year in over 1,000 years. Temperatures went over 100 degrees for weeks, and the land became even drier. On April 14, 1935, after months of terrible weather, the sky finally looked clear, and there was barely any wind, which was rare for this area. People came outside as they were hoping that the worst was finally over. When Oklahoma minister announced that a few good rainstorms would make the land fertile again. But unfortunately, that morning, a cold wind from Canada met warm air in the Dakotas and started a massive dust storm. The storm grew to hundreds of miles wide and thousands of feet tall. A sunny day instantly became completely dark. Drivers had to hide in their cars, and other people went down into basements, found refuge in barns, fire stations, tornado shelters, and under their beds to stay safe. The storm didn't stop for hours and took at least 20 lives. Many people couldn't stop coughing, and one man went blind. The storm was so strong, it carried 300,000 tons of dirt across the country and even reached the East Coast.
You're standing in the middle of a vast, empty desert in Saudi Arabia. But in the middle of that emptiness, two enormous mirrored skyscrapers rise side by side, in perfect parallel to each other. This isn't just some sci-fi concept, it's the line, the centerpiece of Saudi Arabia's boldest urban project yet. Now, Saudi Arabia is already home to some of the most ambitious architecture in the world, from Riyadh's King Abdullah Financial District to the iconic Abraj Al Bayt Towers in Mecca. They've been working hard for years. But the line is in a league of its own. This project was announced in 2021, and it is part of a larger vision for the country's future called NEOM, a $500 billion mega project designed to redefine how people live, work, and interact with the environment. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Well, I don't know. But Nadmi Al Nasser, the longtime chief executive of the ambitious project, has recently departed. Suspicious. Even more so because NEOM's statement issued soon after did not give any plausible reason for his departure. Then, the line project itself was originally expected to cost around $200 billion. But by 2024, that number had skyrocketed to a mind-blowing $2 trillion. That's about twice Saudi Arabia's entire GDP. And if you ask independent experts, they think it could end up costing even more. At first, the plan was to build about 10 miles of the project and have 1.5 million people living there by 2030. By now, the expectations are way more modest. Only just under 1.5 miles are likely to be done by 2030, with fewer than 300,000 residents. The project has come across a lot of problems along the way. Engineering issues and management problems have caused major delays, and progress hasn't been as fast as hoped. And now, let's figure out what exactly is the line. It's a literal city made up of two parallel skyscrapers, each towering 1,640 feet high. That's higher than almost all the tallest skyscrapers in the world. These skyscrapers are 656 feet wide and stretch for a mind-boggling 106 miles across the northwest of Saudi Arabia, right near the Red Sea. The most astounding thing? The entire city is actually within this one structure. There are no cars, no roads, no emissions. But we'll go into detail a bit later. The complex is supposed to house 9 million people, and all of this running entirely on clean energy. Such a project aligns perfectly with Saudi Arabia's ambitious Vision 2030 plan. The outside of the skyscrapers will be covered in mirrors that will reflect the surrounding desert landscape, creating an almost seamless blend between the city and its surroundings. Inside, there will be lush parks, cascading waterfalls, flying taxis, and even robot helpers to take care of everyday tasks. They're also planning to make an artificial moon as part of the city's design. One more thing that makes the line so unique is its design. Unlike traditional cities that spread out horizontally, the line is vertical. Everything, homes, offices, parks, schools, shopping centers, are stacked on top of each other in layers. This means that residents won't need to travel long distances to get what they need. In fact, the designers promise that all amenities will be within a 5-minute walk from anywhere in the city. And while it's compact in width, the city's vertically layered structure means it can comfortably fit all 9 million residents, while leaving plenty of room for parks, natural spaces, and modern conveniences. There's even a plan for year-round climate control, keeping both indoor and outdoor spaces at comfortable temperatures. no matter how harsh the desert weather gets. Of course, even with everything close by, people will still need to get around the city. Worry not, the line has it covered in the most futuristic way possible. It features a high-speed train system that will travel from one end of the city to the other in just 20 minutes. That's 106 miles in 20 minutes with only 4 stops along the way. Imagine being able to get anywhere in the city faster than you could drive across town in most places today. Besides the train, the line will also have autonomous vehicles. Those will be cars and shuttles driving themselves with the help of advanced technology. They will handle everything from parking to going around obstacles. Even cooler, in the line, every car, train, and any other piece of infrastructure will be connected in a huge network called the Internet of Things. Sensors and real-time data will allow traffic to flow smoothly, preventing delays and reducing congestion. They first spoke about the NEOM project in 2017. Besides the line, NEOM is supposed to include an octagon-shaped floating industrial city and a posh mountain ski resort. There, Saudi Arabia will host the Asian Winter Games in 2029. Plus, there will be the world's largest green energy plant, which will make the region self-sufficient and sustainable. The goal of NEOM is to attract people from around the world, not just to visit, but to live there. Residents will even be given their own identity, Neomians. Not everyone thinks this construction is a good idea. Some urban planners and architects have pointed out pretty big flaws in the city's straight-line layout. You see, in a regular city like Johannesburg, which covers way more ground than the line, 2 random people are usually only about 20 miles apart. But in the line, the average distance between 2 random people would be 35 miles. That's almost double, even though the line's overall area is way smaller. This setup could make it harder for people to connect socially and might be a pain to navigate, even with a high-speed train zipping through it. Now, they promise that every resident will have everything they need within a 5-minute walk, but there are doubts too. People wonder if living in a super compact, stacked-up design might end up feeling claustrophobic or even too much to handle. As for the whole mirrored exterior idea, it looks pretty cool in renderings. But there's an opinion it could actually mess with the environment. Reflecting all that sunlight in a desert might disturb local wildlife or create unexpected heat issues. The line's high-tech features sound amazing, but they come with their own set of headaches. The city is supposed to run on the Internet of Things tech and autonomous vehicles. Sounds awesome, right? But how are they going to pull that off for a 106-mile-long city? For things to run smoothly, every piece of tech, cars, trains, infrastructure, needs to be perfectly in sync, sharing tons of real-time data. If there's even a tiny glitch, it could throw a wrench into daily life for millions of people. Then there's that high-speed train. It does sound like a dream, but actually building and keeping it running in the middle of a desert is not so easy. The heat, shifting sands, and wear and tear on the tracks could cause big delays and rack up costs pretty quickly. People around the world are questioning if the line is even doable. The first inhabitants were supposed to start living there by 2030, but there are reports about scaling the project back, so that deadline feels like a big stretch. There's also a sustainability issue. The line is supposed to have 0 emissions and 100% clean energy. But building something so massive is bound to take tons of resources. With all these challenges, Saudi Arabia is looking into new ways to fund the line and figure out which parts of their Vision 2030 projects to prioritize. An insider has recently said that some projects might go ahead as planned, while others could be delayed or scaled down. This lines up with what Ali Shahabi, who's on NEOM's advisory board, has said. He admitted that the Vision 2030 goals were always meant to be super ambitious. Like, almost too ambitious. But he argued that even if they only pull off part of it in time, it'll still be a big deal.
The authorities in a town in northwestern Poland decided to build an observation tower in a public park. Nothing special about that, right? It wasn't until a local archaeologist started digging. It seemed that he had found remains of a fort, But not just any fort. The legendary Jomsborg, or as people also call it, the Viking medieval New York. It's not unusual for Viking finds to pop up in this area. Archaeologists have suspected for a long time that the Polish island near Germany could be the site of the legendary city. And the locals believe in this too. Every year they hold the continent's biggest Viking festival there. People dress up and reenact the Vikings' way of life. The time period I'm talking about is the 10th century. Scholars believe Jomsborg thrived back then, if it was even real. And that's a big if. The mystery has been going on for more than half a millennium. The two most important questions troubling historians are whether the Viking stronghold was real and where it was located. The first historical records that mention the town can be traced back to the 12th century. Recently, a golden disc appeared in Sweden. It contained the names of Jomsborg and Harold Bluetooth. Does the man's last name sound familiar? That's because the Bluetooth technology we use today was named after him. He was a Danish king who apparently ruled over Jomsborg as well, and historians know he lived in the 10th century, right around the time the Viking legendary city reached its peak. All the historical sources we have lack one thing: the city's exact location. Ancient texts describe Jomsborg as a vibrant trading post that grew around a fortress. It had thousands of residents and a pier for ships to dock. This settlement should be somewhere along the southern coast of the Baltic Sea. Just the Polish section of the coastline is more than 4 times longer than the Grand Canyon. The city could be anywhere within the medieval Wendland. Today, this region is split between Germany and Poland, and it's called Pomerania. Luckily for archaeology buffs, there are clues. The Polish city with the newly discovered fort lies near a lagoon. According to ancient sources, the legendary city had room for hundreds of ships. Sagas put the total number of vessels at 360. These are Old Norse epics in prose. A lagoon is the perfect place to moor a large fleet. The waters here are calm. There are no big waves like in the open sea. Speaking of the sea, some historians believe that the city now lies underwater. According to them, the site was located off the northwest coast of Eustom Island. Today, this area is submerged under the Baltic Sea. Let's say Jomsborg really existed. Who lived there? The name of the inhabitants is not very imaginative: Jomsvikings. These people are just as mysterious as their fabled city. They are mentioned in sagas and legends. And there are a couple of rune stones, those are raised stones with runic letters, that mention battles they took part in. Runes were a writing system used by Germanic peoples, including the Vikings, before they adopted the Latin script. And that's pretty much it. There's no hard archaeological evidence that would prove Jomsvikings ever existed. If these myths and legends turn out to be true, then Jomsborg really resembled New York. All nationalities with historical ties to the region lived there: Germans, Slavs, and Vikings. Now keep in mind that a Viking wasn't a nationality but more of a profession. The hotspot of Viking activity was present-day Sweden and Denmark. A lot of Vikings had Scandinavian origins, but not all of them. In terms of genes, they were a mixed bunch. Scientists even found evidence that some Vikings came from southern Europe, but none of them wore those helmets with horns. We owe that image to 19th century operas. The real Vikings had simple iron helmets with a prominent nose guard. The Jomsvikings were sort of a brotherhood, and in any tight-knit community, members had to obey certain rules. One of them stated that you had to be brave. This meant that if your opponent is not bigger than you and didn't have better fighting tools, you weren't allowed to flee the scene. Sounds a bit far-fetched, but this was an actual Viking rule of conduct. Also, Vikings could leave the city for only 3 days. Any longer, absence required permission from the elders, and they wouldn't allow you to have a conflict with anyone from the Brotherhood. Forgive and forget seemed to have been the Jomsvikings' motto. These rules sound fair, but Jomsborg didn't last long. It only existed for some 85 years. That's the length of the average lifespan in the European Union today. Basically, 1 human generation. In fact, the whole Viking Age lasted shortly, just over 2 centuries in total. But this was long enough to create the legend of the Norsemen. They are all over our popular culture. There was a TV show, Vikings, and the movie, The Northman. Even the animated movie How to Train Your Dragon had a little Viking as the main hero. And most of them mention a place from Norse mythology, Valhalla. Now, if Jomsborg is semi-legendary, Valhalla is 100% fiction. It is the Hall of Fallen Warriors. Remember how the Jomsvikings had to honor a code of behavior? They did so in the hope of earning their place in Valhalla. This was a splendid place. The people there feast on boar meat every day, under a roof made of shields. Every Viking's dream, right? That's not all. They get into scrimmages with each other on a daily basis. But what exactly motivated the Vikings to take up a life of seafaring? There is no simple answer, but this seems to be a rags to riches story. Scandinavian people traded fur with other European nations. From them, they found out about the riches that lay to the south of their homeland. And they also knew that European leaders didn't always get along well with each other. So why not take advantage of this and earn extra cash on the side? The Vikings' motivation seems pretty modern. The very first raid was carried out by Norwegian Vikings. They sailed across the North Sea to northeast England. Europeans were shocked by the boldness of these raiders from the north. The Viking Age was about to begin. The Norsemen soon realized that European nations were ready to pay a hefty sum to avoid their visits. At the beginning of the 11th century, the English paid the Vikings more than $300,000 in today's money to leave them alone. There was even a special word for this tax. The influx of all this wealth made the Vikings' appetite only grow bigger. But this was all about to change in 1066, possibly the most important date in English history. That year, the last great Viking king went to England. However, he couldn't find victory at Stamford Bridge. Yes, the place where the Chelsea Football Club plays its matches today. After the Norwegian king lost, the number of raids decreased. The Europeans were better equipped to defend themselves. The Viking Age slowly came to an end. But this didn't mean that the Vikings were gone forever. They stayed in Iceland for 400 years. The island was largely uninhabited before they came in the 9th century. And in England, the Vikings left their trace in place names. Every town that ends in by was first settled by these Scandinavians. There are around 2,000 place names across Great Britain and Ireland that can be linked to the Vikings. And can you guess which part of France has the most Viking-related toponyms? The name says it all: Normandy. The mouth of the River Seine is where most Danish Vikings settled in the 9th century. From there, they sent several raiding parties to Paris itself.
Is the Big Apple getting a little too heavy for its own good? A recent study revealed that New York City is sinking. And get this, it's all because of those towering skyscrapers. Apparently, the whole event is called subsidence, which is when the Earth's surface settles bit by bit, or suddenly sinks. Soft sediments shifting and the weight of the city itself are the culprits behind this sinking sensation. Now, don't get too alarmed. The study found that New York is sinking at a rate of 0.04 to 0.07 inches per year. Sure, that doesn't sound like much, but there are parts of the city that are sinking even faster than that. This sinking situation could cause some trouble for the city, especially since it's already pretty low-lying and home to over 8 million people. So it's important that local authorities come up with some strategies to tackle the growing flood risk and rising sea levels. Although, I'm not sure building giant seawalls is the way to go. We might need to get a little more creative than that. Geologists want to make sure we're all aware that building more high-rises near the coast, rivers, or lakes could contribute to future flood risks. So we really need to think twice before we start constructing skyscrapers left and right. In recent studies, scientists calculated the total mass of all the buildings in New York City, over 1 million of them, and it adds up to a whopping 1.68 trillion pounds. Talk about a heavy load. Now, they didn't include the weight of the roads, sidewalks, bridges, and other paved areas, so you can only imagine how much more weight is added to the city. But hey, even with these limitations, the researchers did a pretty good job of accounting for the complex geology beneath New York, including the sand, silt, clay deposits, and good old bedrock. They found out that certain types of soil, like clay and artificial fill, are more prone to subsidence. On the other hand, bedrock stays pretty firm and keeps those skyscrapers in place. So at least we don't have to worry about the Empire State Building taking a dive anytime soon. Comparing their fancy models with satellite data, The researchers created a map of the city showing where the sinking is happening. And guess what? The increased urbanization and all that groundwater pumping and draining are only making things worse. It's high time we start protecting our resources, don't you think? I wouldn't start packing my bags just yet. New York isn't the only sinking city out there, you know. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is facing some serious sinking action too. In fact, parts of it could be underwater by 2050. That's like a real-life Atlantis situation. Over 30 million people in Jakarta are now deciding if they should relocate the entire city. If there's a city out there we should worry about sinking, that's Venice for sure. But why is it so eager to take a dive, you might ask? Well, let me tell you the complex truth. You see, Venice decided to set up shop on a marshy lagoon with shoddy foundations. As time went by, the ground underneath just couldn't hold it together and started compacting like a squished marshmallow. On top of that, the city's been slurping up groundwater like it's going out of style or something. The cherry on top of this mushy cake is that the sea levels have also been slowly rising. And guess what? Those sneaky plate tectonics are having a laugh by shoving the Adriatic plate under the Apennine Mountains, giving Venice an extra push downward. Someone had the bright idea to stop pumping groundwater, thinking they could stop the sinking shenanigans. But hold your gondolas. A new study revealed that the sinking hasn't completely stopped, just slowed down a bit. It turns out the whole area is tilting ever so slightly to the east, with Venice perched on the slightly higher end. You must be wondering how much Venice sinks in a year, right? Brace yourself for this shocking revelation. It's sinking at a rate of about 0.04 to 0.07 inches a year, similar to New York. At this pace, in the next 20 years, it could sink a whopping 3 inches below sea level. To avoid turning into a Venetian fishbowl, locals are frantically building special barriers to keep the water from crashing into the lagoon. But don't hold your breath, because this project has had more delays than you'd expect. Oh, and have you noticed that charming old-style vibe in Venice? It's not just because they're fans of the vintage look. Those salty waters have been wreaking havoc on the buildings, thanks to the water levels constantly breaching the original damp-proofing. Now the water's cozying up to the masonry, and the ground floors of many apartments are no longer safe enough to live in. Now, when will Venice take a dive into the abyss? It's hard to say for sure. Subsidence and rising sea levels are as slow and unpredictable as a turtle in a marathon. But experts have playfully warned that if things continue as they are, Venice could be doing the backstroke beneath the waves by 2100. Fear not, though. They're doing their best to protect this floating gem of history and culture from becoming a Hollywood disaster flick. So don't cancel that Venice day trip just yet. New Orleans has a peculiar watery situation going on too. You see, this lively place was initially built just a smidge above sea level, and now it's gradually sinking. Back in the day, when an area of the city called the French Quarter was just popping up, folks had to make do with what they had. They scored the best land they could find, but it was only about 10 feet above sea level. And let's not forget, the rest of the city is as flat as a pancake, with the areas around the French Quarter being just a hair lower. Now, even though they knew they were up against some soggy odds, the resourceful New Orleans residents did their best to elevate their houses above the flood-prone land they chose as their home. There's more. The ground beneath New Orleans is as wobbly as a plate of Jell-O. Architects had to keep things short and sweet because they feared the soil couldn't handle the weight of taller structures. They played it safe, sticking to 2 or 2.5 stories. Here's where it gets interesting. The city installed a fancy drainage system in the 1900s, thinking it would solve their water woes. And while it did help with the marshes and all, it inadvertently sucked the life out of the soil. Yep, the ground was left high and dry, without enough sediment and water to keep it steady. As a result, those former marshes sank as if they were in a quicksand competition. By the 1930s, things got even more topsy-turvy. 1/3 of the city was below sea level, and by the time Hurricane Katrina made its grand entrance, that number skyrocketed to around 50%. Oh, and here's the icing on the cake. Sea levels decided to join the party, rising faster than a helium balloon. So now, not only is New Orleans sinking, but the surrounding area is also at various degrees below sea level. So, what can we do about all these sinking cities? Well, for instance, we could manage our water consumption a bit better. We can't just keep sucking groundwater out of the earth like there's no tomorrow. We've got to find new ways to quench our urban centers' thirst. Think about it. We could purify surface waters, or even turn salty seawater into a sweet solution. Of course, we'll need a boatload of energy to make it all work. Speaking of great urban water management, let me tell you about a town in Denmark called Nye. These guys have got it all figured out. They collect rainwater and use it to supply their toilets and washing machines. Talk about resourcefulness. Now that's what I call a splash of genius.
Oh boy, scientists predict a volcanic eruption that is likely to be one of the most destructive in the history of our species. There's a 1 in 6 chance of it happening in this century, and it could seriously change the climate even more and put millions of lives in danger. Back in January 2022, the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcano erupted in the South Pacific Ocean, creating a huge explosion. It sent tsunamis all the way to Japan, North America, and South America. Tonga itself was hit hard, with damage costing nearly 20% of the country's entire economy. Now, researchers at the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen have studied ice samples from Greenland and Antarctica, and their findings are worrying, predicting potential global volcanic disaster. They say there's a real chance of a much bigger eruption, a whopping 10 to 100 times larger than Tonga's. In the past, eruptions this size used to change the climate and even cause civilizations to collapse. Despite future volcanic eruption risks, experts say the world isn't prepared at all. Michael Cassidy, a volcanologist from the University of Birmingham, warns that no sufficient effort is made to handle a disaster like this. He says that NASA and other space agencies spend billions on asteroid defense. At the same time, a volcanic supereruption is way more likely than an asteroid impact. And right now, there's no global plan for dealing with a massive eruption, even though it's likely to be far more destructive. The last magnitude 7 eruption happened in 1815 at Mount Tambora in Indonesia. Then, thousands of people lost their lives in just a few days. The disaster also disrupted weather and caused food shortages worldwide, affecting millions. That eruption was the biggest in recorded history. It blasted a massive cloud of particles into the sky. Those particles blocked sunlight, cooled the planet, and caused worldwide chaos. The year after the eruption became known as the Year Without a Summer. Temperatures plummeted, crops failed, famine spread, and a cholera pandemic broke out, leading to tens of thousands of lost lives. A shocking fact, the eruption may have even inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein while stuck indoors during the unusually cold summer of 1816 in Switzerland. Now, since then, many volcanoes have erupted, but none have matched Tambora's scale. Now, over 200 years later, scientists warn that there's a new supervolcano threat. Another massive eruption could be on the way, and the world might not be ready for it. So, while scientists seriously discuss the likelihood of the next volcanic eruption, experts are calling for urgent action to prepare before it's too late. So, the thing is, a massive volcanic eruption today could be even more devastating than the Year Without a Summer. Unlike back then, we're already dealing with all kinds of weather changes and a more fragile global system, which could make the effects even worse. Dr. Michael Rampino, a geological scientist, warns that the world is more unstable now, and it means that a modern-day mega-eruption could have even more severe consequences. But this time, greenhouse gases from fossil fuels may make the aftermath of such an eruption even colder instead of warmer. So we're talking about volcanic activity endangering humanity. Dr. Thomas Aubrey, a volcanologist, found that in a hotter, more turbulent atmosphere, the sulfur dioxide gas released by a volcanic eruption would spread faster and farther than in the past. This gas forms sulfate aerosols, which reflect sunlight and cause global cooling. Because these tiny particles would be more evenly distributed, they'd have a stronger cooling effect than in 1815. Another atmospheric scientist at Cambridge explains that the size of these airborne particles matters. It affects how they absorb sunlight, and in a future warmer climate, an eruption could make the surface cooling stronger by 15%. At the same time, there are still many unknowns. Scientists from the University of Geneva say that we're only beginning to understand the full impacts of such an event. It's also difficult to precisely estimate future volcanic eruption risks, since we have very little data on older eruptions. So, to understand past volcanic activity, researchers analyze ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica, as well as ancient tree rings. Those act as historical records of weather changes. These measurements suggest that several eruptions in the past few thousand years temporarily cooled the planet by about 2 to 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the most catastrophic examples is the 1257 Somalis eruption in Indonesia, which was so powerful that it likely triggered the Little Ice Age. It was a period of global cooling that lasted for hundreds of years. More recently, the 1991 Mount Pinatubo eruption in the Philippines slightly cooled Earth for a few years. Because this eruption happened in the satellite era, scientists were able to measure exactly how much sulfur dioxide was released and how it affected the atmosphere. But even with modern tools like satellites and seismic instruments, scientists still have difficult times forecasting the next big volcanic eruption. Luckily, even though we can't predict the exact timing, we can study worst-case scenarios to help authorities prepare. This includes creating evacuation plans and stockpiling food in case of global crop failures caused by volcanic cooling. The changes in weather patterns might make volcanoes more active. Melting glaciers can reduce pressure on underground magma, which will increase the chances of an eruption. Plus, more extreme rainfall, which is becoming more and more common, can seep into volcanic cracks and cause powerful steam-driven explosions. It can affect both active and dormant volcanoes. Because of these risks, researchers are now mapping volcanoes that are the most vulnerable to climate change. Their studies show that the highest supervolcano threat comes from such areas as Iceland, Chile, and Indonesia. Those are places where glaciers are melting quickly or rainfall is increasing dramatically. A 2022 study found that 716 volcanoes worldwide, that's about 58% of all known active above-ground volcanoes, could be triggered by extreme rainfall, increasing the likelihood of another mini ice age. Now let's get back to that Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai eruption that occurred on January 15, 2022. Scientists have confirmed that it created the highest plume ever recorded. The volcano, located underwater in the South Pacific, sent an ash cloud 187,000 feet high. That's higher than any previously recorded eruption. What makes this eruption even more remarkable is that it was the first to ever reach the mesosphere. It's the third layer of Earth's atmosphere. The mesosphere begins at about 160,000 feet above Earth, where meteors start burning up and creating shooting stars. To measure the plume's height, researchers from the University of Oxford and RAL Space used data from 3 geostationary weather satellites. Before this, the record for the highest volcanic plume was held by Mount Pinatubo's 1991 eruption in the Philippines, which reached 131,000 feet high. Interestingly, this kind of measurement was only possible thanks to modern satellite technology, and a decade ago, no one would have been able to do this. Another volcano we should mention in relation to a potential global volcanic disaster is located on Iceland's Reykjanes Peninsula. Its latest eruption happened in November of 2024, leading to evacuations in nearby areas. The eruption began just after 11 p.m. with little warning. The volcano released orange lava from a nearly 2-mile-long fissure. Authorities ordered evacuations for about 50 homes and guests staying at the Blue Lagoon Spa Resort, a popular tourist destination southwest of Reykjavik. While air travel was not affected, officials still warned of potentially dangerous gas emissions spreading across parts of the peninsula, including the nearby town of Grindavik. Grindavik, home to 3,800 residents, has repeatedly witnessed volcanic activity, and past eruptions even damaged its infrastructure and forced evacuations. For example, in August 2024, a 2.5-mile-long crack opened at the Sundhnúkangigar crater near Grindavik. It led authorities declaring a state of emergency as lava flowed in multiple directions. Fortunately, Iceland's meteorological office reported that the latest eruption was significantly smaller than the one in August. Geophysics experts conducted aerial surveys and figured out that the situation appeared less intense than the previous eruptions. These days, Grindavik is not at risk, but the possibility of further developments cannot be ruled out. Scientists predict